Greetings. This is General CJG here, coming to you with the big project that we've been talking about in the State of Star Wars Twitter for a while. This basically is a big one. We are gonna do the unthinkable on Star Wars YouTube because very few people do this. And, well, we figured it was about time that somebody actually, basically teach a lesson to all those people that biasly and unfairly throw all sorts of shit at the prequels. Starting today with the Phantom Menace. So, joining me here are...
Captain Ensign, always ready to just destroy these criticisms.
This is a Spider-Fed Maniac. Good to be here.
Salutations, mortals. Is the Shadow King, King Nazu, your future destroyer. Unfortunately, I don't have time to destroy your entire race, so I'll just destroy these worthless arguments against this harshly criticized movie, as it were.
Indeed. So, we're going to be tackling this one. Defending this movie once again. We did this 2 years ago, back in the day, but now we're basically going to be... Think of this as kind of a remake of sorts, considering the old ones, the old podcasts are kind of long gone, but no worries. So, far out of the way. So, let's get first into, I guess, our experiences with the Phantom Menace. So, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I first saw the Phantom Menace in 2004. Now, at that time, well, I don't know if you kids these days know what a VHS is, but instead of DVDs, we had this thing called a black box, which we put it in a disc, and we watched videos. Now, the resolution wasn't the greatest thing, but I thought, man, this thing looked cool because... all those lasers, the lightsabers, all the aliens. It was my first introduction to Star Wars, so I think I particularly have great memories watching this movie.
Anything else?
Nah.
Okay. Who goes next?
I suppose I could go next.
Okay.
I remember watching The Phantom Menace when it first came out. It was rather enjoyable, for all things considered. And I remember talking it with my friends at this location you mortals call school. So I rather enjoyed, and they rather enjoyed than themselves. So I can't imagine when this hatred started, but I could point to who was responsible for making it mainstream, but we'll get to that later.
Oh, yeah. Anything else?
No, that was about it, really.
Okay. Henson, you go or I go?
Well, I might as well save the penultimate guy, me. He is the best after all. So, I'm old enough to remember a time when there were only 5 Star Wars movies. And as a kid, I saw all these films on the same level. I could understand the difference of eras, but I saw only one franchise. With Phantom Menace in particular, as far as I remember, it was the film that I watched the most before Revenge of the Sith came out. No idea why that is. I was just drawn to it. And as a kid, I didn't hear anyone say anything bad about this or the other prequels. I'm talking about school here. It wasn't until some time after the Plinkett reviews came out that I started hearing negative thoughts toward them. It never dissuaded me from enjoying the film as much as I do, especially now. But yeah, truth be told, I was pretty shocked to find the reaction of at least the vocal majority.
Anything else?
No, that's that.
Okay, I guess at least to mine. So my experience, for those that have heard of it before, it's basically the same as I said last time. So I had no real idea on much about... I didn't know much about Star Wars at the time. Maybe I played Star Wars Trilogy Arcade before watching any of the movies. I don't remember. But But as far as I know, my first true exposure to Star Wars, the movies, was The Phantom Menace. That's actually the movie that I saw first. I saw it in 2001 when my dad brought the DVD to my house. That was actually like the first time I saw Star Wars, like the movie, like fully saw it on DVD. It definitely was something that I never saw before in movies or even TV series before. Like, it blew me away. It was one of my favorite movies at the time, and the only thing that surpassed it was, of course, the other Star Wars movies. Attack of the Clones came 1 year later for me, and then 2004 the special editions of episodes 4, 5, 6, and then episode 3. So that was the only things that could top it off in my mind. But yeah, so that was how I first experienced episode 1, The Phantom Menace. My dad brought a DVD. I watched it. I loved it. I still have the DVD upstairs, actually. It definitely brings memories. Nowadays, I use the Blu-ray, the 2011 Blu-ray to watch the movie, or in Amazon Prime, or in Netflix, if it is there. But yeah, so that's how I saw The Phantom Menace. Now, in regards to its reception, I also didn't hear anybody hate it when in the early 2000s. It was only until I was in middle school, basically late 2000s and early 2010s, when that's where I started hearing rumblings about the hatred of the prequels. But we'll get into that in detail in a bit. So, but yes, that was my experience with The Phantom Menace. There's not much to say on this one. It's episode 3, the one I have the most lengthy experience, but Phantom Menace, not so much other than that. So with that, I guess now we go into the impact on the fandom, how this movie impacted the fandom. So, okay, now who wants to bring, I guess, any sort of points or ways in which this movie impacted the fandom, the Star Wars fandom, of course. Got any ideas, guys, or points?
Well, I do remember Akira Toriyama rather liking the Phantom Menace, and I believe he made a manga, or at least some manga-like illustrations based on it, such as him making his rendition of young Anakin Skywalker.
Interesting. I didn't know about that one. That's interesting. There is one thing that we gotta mention in regards to the Phantom Menace. So, first main thing that we should mention is that this is the first Star Wars movie since 1983. The first
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, since Return of the Jedi, basically. Which is, what, 16 years? Excluding those Ewok movies, but then again, most people...
You might as well just say theatrically released movies.
No one cares about those movies, to be honest.
No, I mean, if we want to be accurate, just say theatrically released movies.
Yeah, okay, so the first theatrically released Star Wars movie in years. So yeah, that was a big deal. Now... Question to either of you three guys. Were you there when in the hype of the Phantom Menace? I know it's probably hard because I don't know what it is. All right.
I was not.
I wasn't even in this planet.
Yeah.
I wasn't even born.
I was there day one.
You were there?
Yes.
Oh, how was it, King?
It was crowded, to say the least. Then again, it was crowded every time I saw the prequels. We had to show up an hour ahead in advance just to get some seats.
I see. And what did the people at the time thought about the movie? Like, you probably got some thoughts from some people.
There were a lot of people who liked it, and some people were making parodies about it. It was all harmless and good fun. It wasn't mean-spirited like it would be today. I mean, then again, this was also around the same time that that Star Wars had established its own religion, to say the least. But that might have been more based around the original trilogy. Not sure if they included the prequels or any other material from Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Anything else on how you and the other people experienced Phantom Menace at the time?
No, that was pretty much it. I mean, we waited, we watched it, we enjoyed it. That was pretty tame experience. Didn't get controversial until years later.
Yeah, so there is this argument that the Phantom Menace was hated since day one. There's even a few clips of a few people saying that they didn't like it or they were disappointed. They spout that as being the majority of the fandom hating it back in the day, but it doesn't seem like it was that way this time. At least not from what you told us, King.
It sounds very anecdotal. Nobody was saying they hated it when I went to see it.
And as a kid growing up in the early 2000s, as far as I remember, whenever we did talk about Star Wars, we didn't have anything bad to say about the prequels. And like I said, I saw the films as like same level, and I would bet money on all the other kids my age seeing them the same way.
If I recall correctly, the critics seemed to favor the Phantom Menace back then too.
There was some weird guy on an interview saying that he didn't like the movie and saying he demanded an apology from George Lucas.
Oh yeah.
Which was kind of weird.
Yeah, I've seen that video. There is some people claim that when the Phantom Menace came out, it actually reviewed not as well as the other Star Wars movies that were in the 80s and 90s. But these people actually forget that the old Star Wars movies, when they came out, they also were not really that liked by critics. In fact, critics didn't they always dislike anything science fiction in the 70s and 80s?
I mean, science fiction as a genre wasn't taken really seriously.
Yeah, but let's just say the original Star Wars is the reason why Star Trek came back and why they decided to greenlit Alien.
Not just sci-fi films in general, but also sequels as well weren't that favorite because they were considered cash grabs.
Yeah, that's true. There were
Yeah, we didn't have many big budgeted science fiction films back then. We had the occasional Space Odyssey, but that was about it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the people claiming that Phantom Menace is the first Star Wars movie that was reviewed harshly by the critics. No, it's not the first time. So I don't know why people are saying that this movie was universally hated back then when it came out. Like, no, not really.
Revisionist history.
Of course. And speaking of revisionist history, there are a few people that kickstarted a certain train of thought called the Prequel Hate Train. You know those individuals that kickstarted that shit into mainstream media? Plinkett and Confused Matthew. More so Plinkett, but Confused Matthew played a role as well. So
Plinkett for the course of more than 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to remind the audience, when I was a kid, I didn't know anybody hated the prequels, especially to this extent. So when I started watching reviews, I didn't watch Plinkett until much later, but when I watched reviews, I was shocked. Especially since you got these people who it's just a disconnect. We'll get into it more later.
Yeah.
I, however, encountered Plinkett before YouTube was even a thing. He posted his reviews of the prequels on JoeBlow.com, and I read his review of Revenge of the Sith, and I saw that it was complete and utter nonsense, and spent the whole time during my free time just poking all the holes in his reviews, and it was just absolute nonsense. So I just ignored him, and I thought nobody was going to take him seriously. But I overestimated people, and that's why I don't have respect for them.
It just goes to show you that if somebody already has their mind set on something, you could have the worst argument, but the people will still eat it up, because you're telling them exactly what they want to hear.
They don't want to hear reason. That's why here's the thing. People don't want to hear what they need to hear or what makes sense. They want to hear what they want to hear, and this is what happens if people keep hearing the things they want to hear for a decade or even longer, right? Because, Plinkett has been existed way before even YouTube, right?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. But he definitely gained notoriety until 2009. So there is that. Something else we're going to mention about the impact of the fandom is how apparently this movie affected certain people. Some for the positive, some for the negative. Negative, definitely Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best, unfortunately. Now, what was it the fans or the critics who harassed either of them? Either one, it doesn't matter. It was clear that whoever did it had a extreme strong distaste and hatred for the movie to the point that they wanted to blame it all on the actors unfairly, and it is absolutely disgusting that happened. Like, it's terrible.
What you can see is very hypocritical, I noticed, in recent years. Since 2014 to 2021. Now, there has been... You guys all know that basically the entertainment media is on the side of Disney Star Wars, right?
At the time between 2014 and 2017, yeah. Obviously, after The Last Jedi, it changed, but it's
not that hard.
Yeah, so
we can see that the media back then didn't really have a problem when people like Emmett Best or Jake Lloyd was harassed as hell, and they Pratt and George Lucas say all these nonsensical things about him, but now they're religiously defending the sequel trilogy and religiously defending Kelly Marie Tran. I mean, she was harassed, but where were you when Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best were harassed? In fact, you know what's really weird? In fact, Ahmed Best said it was the media almost made him commit suicide. I mean, that's just messed up. So, I mean, like, if those entertainment media almost made one man killed himself, and now they're hypocritically preaching us like how toxic the people who don't like Disney Star Wars is. Like, where's the logical consistency? Where were you back then?
These people don't really care about the actors from the prequels. Remember, Mark Hamill mentioned how awful Jake Lloyd was being treated in an interview, and the people interviewing him just wanted him to skip talking about Jake Lloyd and wanted him to talk about The Last Jedi.
Oh.
I mean, he's mentioning a person's life being ruined due to awful fan reaction. All they care about was some stupid movie.
So what I can notice now, looking at the prequels and the sequels, like these people preaching about toxic fandom. I mean, not preaching about being against toxic fandom. They don't really care about toxic fandom. You see? That to them, their definition of being toxic is anyone who disagrees or dislikes what they like. Because look at them, where were they in 1999 through 2005 or pre-Force Awakens? They weren't on our side. They didn't care whether we were bullied by all these online hacks or how these actors were harassed. Where were they? They were nowhere. In fact, they were encouraging them, basically say all these stupid stuff and harassing these people.
Yeah, we'll definitely mention some more stuff that those Sequel Trilogy fanboys said that makes them hypocrites when it comes to the criticisms of the Prequel Trilogy, but we'll get to that in a bit. So, anything else to mention on the impact on the fandom made by the Phantom Menace?
No.
Okay,
No.
Then now we get into the summary of the story, which it's a quick and easy one. So basically, when the Trade Federation, they organized a blockade around the planet of Naboo, Supreme Chancellor Valoran sends in 2 Jedi Knights, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, to negotiate the end of the blockade. However, Viceroy Gondray ordered the Jedi to be killed, and then he ordered the invasion of Naboo. The Jedi escaped, and they tried to warn the Queen of Naboo for this invasion. However, she was captured by the Trade Federation, but the Jedi managed to rescue her. They managed to flee Naboo in their spacecraft, but their ship was damaged because of the blockade. They land on a desert planet, Tatooine, to basically fix the ship. They need specific parts, but they have trouble getting them. However, a slave boy, Anakin Skywalker, basically he helps them to retrieve the part by winning a race. He wins the race. They get out of Tatooine. They go to Coruscant to try to settle the matter. They didn't really settle much, so Queen decided to just basically return to Naboo to settle things herself. And well, from there, the big battle of Naboo happens. The Queen, as well as the Jedi, are victorious in liberating Naboo, and from there, well, happy ending. Well, mostly, not that much, but we'll get into we won't get into the details of the story because you already guys know the story. It's just basically a summary of that. So that's basically the story. So now we should get into the characters. So let's start with the main character, Qui-Gon Jinn. So let's get into him. So guys, what do you guys have to say about Qui-Gon Jinn and his character?
I rather enjoy the fact that he's more what a Jedi should be and isn't representative of how they are during the times of the prequel, where they're more just puppets of the Republic, where he follows more of the Force and guides it whether regardless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else, guys, gotta mention?
I mean, what I like about Qui-Gon is essentially the character who connects everyone and gives purpose to other people. Like Jar Jar Binks, look at him. He was stupid, he was kind of clumsy, but Qui-Gon basically helped Jar Jar and made him serve a bigger purpose. Qui-Gon is the one who also made Obi-Wan and Anakin knew each other. Qui-Gon is also basically the one who connects everyone. He's like the center of everyone else, which, what's the word? He basically connects people so they could serve a greater purpose, and he basically considers everyone not important. Like Obi-Wan says something like, lowly like them to Jar Jar, right?
That actually was more to Anakin in Tatooine, I believe.
But I think Qui-Gon believes in everyone, that they could actually serve a bigger purpose. And that was interesting.
Yeah, indeed. Henson, got something to say on Qui-Gon?
He's a very important character. He's not only the one who connects every other character, but we needed, with the story Lucas wanted to tell, we needed to see what a true Jedi was. To see just how far they'd fallen. That's who Qui-Gon is. We see a Jedi who's not necessarily stoic. He can keep his emotions in check, but he's also he's compassionate to others, and we see that through his interactions with Jar Jar after their initial meeting, and especially with Anakin. He sees the potential and good in those around him, those who others would think are, as Obi-Wan would put it, a pathetic life form.
Mm-hmm.
So when he dies, the reason why it hits us so much, not only because he's been a major player to all these other characters, but also he's one of the only pure Jedi left.
Mm-hmm.
And it also just shows just how nasty the Sith are.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, Qui-Gon was the true Jedi in this movie. The others are more following the will of the Republic rather than the will of the Force. And it only takes until episode 3 and 4 where Obi-Wan actually becomes more of a true Jedi, because right now he's definitely following more, the will of the Republic, just the others, as well as the Jedi Council, which, as we all know how much the Jedi Council are right now in terms of, well, how they behave and think in this point in the timeline. So how would you guys describe Qui-Gon's character? Because certain people apparently can't seem to describe his character.
Apparently they think he doesn't have a character.
Yeah, they think that.
I basically described his character more or less. If I could sum it up in one word, it would be a maverick.
Mm-hmm.
Some people intentionally say that he's the worst Jedi ever, which I don't even understand how.
I believe it was Linkara who said that specifically.
Well, I can think of other Jedi that have done worse deeds. Qui-Gon actually is, a true Jedi. He's not really worse Jedi as in a Jedi that cannot really do its duty of keeping peace and justice.
I was just gonna say, he follows the will of the Force, so while his decision-making can seem odd to those around him, and maybe even the audience, he knows what he's doing. Oh, and that's another thing. He understands how people in the galaxy work. And we see that with his interactions with Watto. I mean, yeah, somebody can, throw the criticism that he's, manipulating Watto, being a dick, I don't know. But he knows how the system works. Instead of just going in guns a-blazing, threatening Watto and stealing the parts they need, because that would be really stupid.
Oh, we'll get into that, Henson. Don't you worry.
So, he plays the game. He trusts the Force, and that's the thing. He trusts the Force more than the other Jedi do. None of them can believe that the Sith have returned. But he knows it.
Mm-hmm. Anything else to mention on Qui-Gon?
No.
No?
I think that's enough for now.
Okay, now let's go to the next big character, Anakin Skywalker, because he's the second most important in this movie. So, Anakin Skywalker. So, what would you guys say about him?
The way I would describe Anakin is he thinks that he's a hopeful boy who has dreams, and he thinks like helping other people is important because he sees the galaxy, like his mother said, like no one tries to help each other. Like, he sees the problem and he wants to help everyone, but reality is sad because he cannot help everyone. I mean, this plot point will be expanded in other materials and the other two films, but let's just say in this movie, he has big dreams, he wants to help everyone, and he tries to be kind to most people around him, I guess.
I would describe him as a gifted idealist who later becomes disillusioned by the things that didn't turn out well in his life. But that's a story for the later films.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I mean, but definitely an emphasis on the gifted part is he's good with mechanics. He's somewhat of a good pilot, and he's also very strong in the Force, as we'll get into later on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Henson, what do you got to say on Anakin?
Well, I would like to bring up that him being young is important because we see how a kid can view the Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. And I'd also like to say because, living in the Star Wars universe would really suck. So, yeah, he can be our point of view character, especially for the younger audience. Him being a kid is important because it emphasizes his arc. And while get into more detail in the later films, we know his starting point, which makes it all the more depressing because we know how he turns up. Mm-hmm. He wants to help people. He has this idea, like one of the first things he thinks about when Qui-Gon admits that he's a Jedi is, you come to free the slaves. Of course, that's not the case. He's a pure-hearted character, a Christ-like figure, if you will. Mm-hmm. But with none of the knowledge about how the galaxy actually works. So throughout this entire movie, he has this idealized view of things. And even in the final battle, he doesn't Mary Sue his way through it. Oh. But he does get lucky. It's almost as if he's kind of following the will of the Force or something to that effect.
Oh, okay. Speaking of that, since we're talking about Anakin Skywalker, we should get into one of the things that defines him, but also makes him a sort of contention in the fandom. The fact that he's the chosen one, and that there's this chosen one prophecy. So as some of you know, this chosen one prophecy, it's been criticized by some people, for starters, because it makes it so that Anakin, for some reason, has no father. And they also hate it because the chosen one prophecy was never mentioned whatsoever in the original trilogy, and that George just put this out of nowhere in this movie.
Anakin not having a father. It's kind of implied in the Revenge of the Sith that Plagueis manipulated the midichlorians and he could create life. This is assumed to be Anakin, or we don't know, maybe it's Darth Sidious according to Disney Star Wars comics, but what am I to complain, right? The Revenge of the Sith movie, I'm debunking these people's claims. Revenge of the Sith implies that Plagueis created him, manipulated the midichlorians because he was so powerful. So yeah, do not complain in this movie. Watch the other movies, they explain stuff.
Or heavily allude to it.
Well, the criticism is more as seen in episodes 4, 5, and 6 didn't exist before episodes 1, 2, and 3. So they'd see it as episode 3 putting a band-aid on that. So that's how they would see it.
I do find it funny that they don't like the fact that it just brings a greater importance to Darth Vader, their favorite character. Here's the thing. Even though he has or they believe that he's this prophesized chosen one, he still has to work for it. He has the potential, and that's the key word, potential, to be the greatest Jedi of all time, but he still has to work for it, for one. And not to mention, the story itself, this is going to have to get more detail. We're going to have to go into more detail in the later films, but for this film, we don't know for certain if he is the chosen one. Qui-Gon believes it, and because he trusts in the Force, we can come to that conclusion too. but we don't know what exactly that means, what that entails. With episode 6 in mind, we can have an idea, but we don't know what's going to happen throughout the rest of this trilogy.
I mean, even though he is the chosen one, and if you look at it, I mean, the Jedi Council doesn't like him. I mean, they say it's dangerous. He's not even control his emotions. And I mean, just look at the council scene where they're testing him. They clearly do not like this kid. So Anakin has to work his way. I mean, this is other films in the course of 10 to 13 years to prove that he is the Jedi. But
The Jedi.
yeah, it's not like a Gary Stu because people don't like him, and he was reluctantly accepted to the order because of Qui-Gon's wishes.
Oh, that reminds me of another point. Nobody likes him, which is something you rarely see in fiction, at least the films I've watched. How many times do you have a main character who nobody likes? Not to mention, and this goes back to my Qui-Gon point, Qui-Gon is the only one who understands Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of them care about his situation. The fact that he, was a slave, the fact that he misses his mother. They don't give him any kind of comfort. Even Obi-Wan, who the only reason he trains him is out of obligation. That's it.
Because
Now, of course, their relationship develops further, but that's the only reason he decides to train him. So this plants the seeds of why Anakin turns to the dark side. People like to say that it's sudden and comes out of nowhere in episode 3, but in this movie, we see the seeds planted. The council doesn't like him. Qui-Gon, the only one who understood him, his father figure, dies. His master only trains him out of obligation and doesn't really like him at first. And he also leaves his mother behind when he's only 9 years old, which would not only screw you up mentally, but also add on to the fact that he's going to this group of people who don't like him also screws up your mind. And turning to the dark side makes total sense.
Yeah, but that's Prequel Hate Trilogy haters. And of course, mentioning how Anakin is a Gary Sue, even though these idiots have somebody far more overpowered in their new Sequel Trilogy era.
Right.
I'd also quickly like to add is that I was able to get all that from this one movie. So just imagine how much more development we're going to get from Anakin in terms of him going to the dark side throughout the next 2 films. So for those who like to say that his turn was sudden, you're morons. Actually pay attention to the movies.
And we also got people like Quinn Ideas saying stupid stuff like they can't accept that Anakin is good with building droids or piloting to the point where he's able to destroy the Trade Federation space station, even though that was partly by accident and he got help from R2-D2. So it wasn't just all him, and not to mention he spent years learning how to be good at mechanics by scavenging parts on Tatooine and experimenting with droids.
Mm-hmm.
Also, during the battle for Naboo, we don't see him fight any vulture droids. He immediately goes into the Trade Federation ship. So unlike a certain other main character of a trilogy, we don't see him pull off feats that he really shouldn't be able to. Cough, cough.
And the only reason he actually destroys the ship is he was randomly pressing buttons and then suddenly a blue torpedo comes out. I mean, it's not like he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, indeed.
Some people could argue that was bad writing if you really wanna, but that just disproves that he is a Gary Stu because he destroyed the ship in an accident.
Not to mention him being a Gary Sue, if he's supposed to be all perfect, don't you think he would have gotten his wish of living with his mother from Tatooine instead of just leaving her behind?
Or how about every Jedi liking him?
That too.
Oh, yeah.
And would he have won the pod races first time he tried it?
Ah, but you guys are forgetting. Details and careful listening or observation skills are for nerds.
Indeed.
Nobody
People
cares
with
about
way too
such
much
shit.
time on their hands, I say.
Yeah, indeed. So, anything else to mention on Anakin Skywalker?
Yeah, him being a kid explains his dialogue. Yes, it can be cringy, but let's be real here. He's a kid.
And not to
It
mention,
makes sense.
not to mention him being a kid further explained his naive nature. So Quinn Ideas is wrong for suggesting that Anakin should have been 15, because no one would buy someone being this idealistic and naive at 15 without them being somewhat stupid.
Padme is supposed to be 14 in this movie, and yet we don't see those traits in her. Well, we'll get into Padme once we finish Anakin.
Point is, him acting the way he does makes sense. If he was any older, it would come off as, honestly, not that believable, because reality would have hit him hard if he was like 14.
Indeed, yeah. Anything else?
No.
Okay, now we go into Padme Amidala, the young queen of Naboo. So, what do you guys got to mention about her?
Well, she's a badass. One, she's smart, capable. She united two groups of people who absolutely hated each other.
With help of Jar Jar.
Of course, because Jar Jar is the key to all of this. The point is, she's vitally important to the story like every other character. But the thing with her is, the stuff with Naboo is the plot of the movie. Or that's the central conflict of the movie. And through her, she's naive like Anakin, but to a different degree. She thinks the Republic is as good as its ideals lead her to believe. Through her, we see just how corrupt the Republic is. We sympathize with her, especially when we start to hear that, oh, people are dying. Do we know that for sure? No. But the point is, it could be happening. She has the weight of an entire planet on her shoulders and has to deal with it, not to mention deal with this tall Jedi who's pissing her off throughout the entire Tatooine sequence. So let it be known that she is not monotoned the entire movie. The only time she speaks in a monotoned way is when she's under the guise of the queen, makeup and the lavish outfits.
Yeah.
Because when she's just Padme, we see her be happy, be compassionate, get pissed off, determined.
Sad.
So, yeah, she has emotions. She shows those emotions. We care about her. We understand her. And, of course, we can see why Anakin would like her.
Yeah, indeed. Another thing to mention about Padme Amidala is that some people like to criticize how, there shouldn't be a very young queen in the planet of Naboo. Like, what is this? Like, 14-year-old leading a planet?
Besides that,
If these people knew anything about history, they would know that they were young rulers. Pharaoh Ptolemy became pharaoh at the age of 9.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, and also, how about the fact that this is fucking Star Wars? It's not really planet Earth. So...
Well, here's the thing, though. You could easily say that this is a different planet
in space.
filled with different people with a different culture and a way of life. It's almost as if some planets, or some civilizations in this case, do things differently than others.
I assume Padme is like 15, right?
She's 14.
14.
She's only 5 years older than Anakin.
See.
Actually,
Yeah.
6 or 5 years.
So like there's like Mary Queen of Scots. She became queen in age 6 days. So yeah. So if a baby could become a queen, well, she's not leading power, but it's not too far off for a 14-year-old. A baby of 6 days could become a queen, then a 14-year-old can become a queen. You see? Actual history. Read books, idiots.
Isn't indeed. Yeah. Anything else to mention on Padme Amidala?
I think through Padme, like Hansen says, you see the current state of Republic. Now, Padme believes the Republic could still do something good, or Republic could still, do great things for the greater good. But we know that Republic is useless, which is really sad, and the Republic's not going to get any better. I think through Padme, we could see the Republic's current saying, like, those guys are so stupid. Why do they do these things? And yeah, it's just depressing.
And also through Padme, we see just how good of a manipulator Palpatine is.
Another character.
Because when he talks to her, what he says does make sense to her and the audience. And that's the real tragedy of it. What he says makes sense. So that's a real tragedy of it all. He knows how to not only play the system, but he knows what buttons to push. He knows how the system works. So he's able to just nudge her in the quote-unquote right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It just goes to show you that for this trilogy, we didn't need 100 Sith fighting 100 Jedi. Fuck you, Jen Sarai.
There is that indeed. So, anything else to mention on Padme?
No.
Okay, now we go into the next one. I don't think we're going to do much here because it's Obi-Wan, and he doesn't play much of a role in this movie compared to the next two, but we can still talk about him. So, guys, what do you got to say on Obi-Wan Kenobi?
So, to me, Obi-Wan represents the traditional Jedi. He is basically a voice of the Council, the one that wants Qui-Gon to follow the strict Jedi code, and Obi-Wan seems to have condescending attitudes towards Jar Jar and Anakin, which people could see why people will not understand why Obi-Wan would such have ideas. I mean, Obi-Wan does become a better person in the other two movies, but you can see he has some superiority complex, I guess.
In short, Obi-Wan's kind of a dick in this movie.
He has a lot to learn. So, that's the easiest way to put it, because it's a Padawan at this point. So, there is that. I like Obi-Wan in this movie, but I do think he definitely is underutilized. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? I'll let you guys think about that. So,
I mean, honestly, I don't think he was underutilized. He served his purpose. Because, let's keep in mind, everybody knew going into this that this was going to be a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And, while, yes, Obi-Wan didn't have as much... didn't have the same level of importance as, say, someone like Qui-Gon. The thing is, though, he did have something to do in this movie. Not as much as some of the other characters, but he had his purpose. Now, of course, bigger role later on, but for this movie, he isn't as important as the other characters. Like Qui-Gon, for instance, needs as much development as he can get because this is his only film. And you can argue that he's the main character. Obi-Wan's just there so we know what a standard Jedi is like. Someone who doesn't really care about the Force all that much.
The will of the Force.
Will of the Force, I mean. And we also have also planting the seeds of why Anakin would turn to the dark side, or what would lead to him doing so, is Obi-Wan not liking him. And while somebody could argue that, oh, they should have been friends, #besties the whole time. Here's the thing, though. You can go through something called a character arc, or development, or progression, in which you can go from not liking someone to liking someone. I know. Weird concept.
Shocker. Shocker with that one. So, anything else to mention on Obi-Wan?
No.
No? Okay. Well, now we get into one of the bigger elephants of the room for this movie. Jar Jar Binks himself. Okay, so let's get into him. So, Jar Jar Binks. So, what do you guys think of him? What do you got to say about him?
He's overhated.
According to MFS, he's described as some kind of an awkward kid trying to fit in places, but has a hard time. And you can see Jar Jar is not really a bad person. He tries to do things good and wants to help people, but he messes up constantly.
I honestly found him rather amusing, and it was a shame that he got a lot of hate that he does. In fact, he still gets hate in Disney canon to the fact to the point where they just reduce him to what do they make him, a street jester?
Clown.
Yeah, they basically did him with that when they could have just given him a redemption arc. But no, they just did that just to pander to the original trilogy fanboys.
I would also like to add, in regards to the hatred for Jar Jar, my dad, who was like 6, or no, he was 8. I think 8 years old when the original came out. When he watched Episode 1, he didn't hate Jar Jar. So the idea that only kids could like Jar Jar, I wouldn't say he likes Jar Jar, but he doesn't hate him, is what I'm getting at.
He tolerates him.
The idea that all adults hate Jar Jar is bullshit.
I mean, if I see Jar Jar, it's like, the dude does make a lot of clumsy jokes. And clumsy actions.
Could one make the argument that that kind of slapstick doesn't belong in Star Wars, especially the amount of slapstick there is? Perhaps. And are some of the jokes annoying? Yes.
Possibly.
To be fair, the original trilogy did have some modicum of slapstick humor to itself.
Well, that's why I'm saying the amount of slapstick that Jar Jar brings.
I mean, to me, it looks like Jar Jar is trying to fit in within the bigger group, all those Naboo people, Jedi, and he doesn't know how to fit because he constantly goes out bumbling and getting into trouble. But this is how Qui-Gon is important. Qui-Gon believes in everyone could do good, and later Jar Jar proves it. Jar Jar is the reason, essentially, why the Naboo and the Gungans have a more peaceful relationship and starts to become friends with each other.
Yes, indeed.
Not to mention, and this is a factoid that people seem to forget, nobody likes Jar Jar. I mean, their thoughts may change throughout the course of the movie, but upon initial meeting, they don't like him. Hell, even on Tatooine, when Obi-Wan's referring to Obi-Wan refers to Anakin as another useless or pathetic life form. The first one obviously being Jar Jar. So, even in the context of the movie, people don't like him. But here's the thing, though. You underestimate him, and fuck the Darth Jar Jar theory, but you underestimate him, but he's not doing it on purpose, cough, cough. So that when he does triumph in the end, it means something. Now, would it have been better if he succeeded without pretty much just goofing off? Yeah, I think that would have been far more impactful for his character, but the way he acts in this movie is important for later on. We know the type of character he is, so that when he's, say, thrown into a position of power, we know how that's going to turn out. Because we've seen how he acts.
We'll get into that movie soon.
Clones.
Yeah, so indeed. Also, can we mention that some people they claim that Jar Jar Binks takes like a majority of the movie, the time of the movie, but in reality, he's not really there to the extent that completely detracts from the main plot of the movie. Like, I never felt that.
Like, most of his slapstick is either, like, off to the side or just not the focus. Except for the final battle, but we have a battle going on, so shit is happening. And when gets hit with a fart, which that's like the one joke I feel like should not have been a focal point, the focus. But it's only a few seconds, so it's more or less just
easily
move along.
Yeah, easily ignorable.
What I think we should bring up is how a lot of people felt that Jar Jar Binks was a racist caricature of Jamaicans and African people.
That shit is literally taken out of context.
African people. Okay, did you know that Captain Panaka is there, and he's an African actor?
Not to mention, it was Ahmed, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Ahmed Best who wanted to do the voice like that.
I think, yeah.
Not to mention, honestly, I would probably go as far as to say the only reason why people say that he's a Jamaican stereotype is because Ahmed Best is black. If he wasn't black, then, I mean, they already don't have a single good argument, but that's like the only thing they have, I think.
Even then, it's
which
not.
isn't even enough. It means nothing.
It's not an argument. I mean, is it because of the way he talks, the accent? I mean, people hate Gungans in general. Some of them do, but
if you actually hear Ahmed Best speak, I mean, you can tell he's doing a voice when he does Jar Jar,
yeah.
but he doesn't change his voice that much. And plus, it's an alien species. Not to mention, even on Earth, different people speak differently.
Yeah.
So, of course, an alien species could have a different kind of accent, or way of speaking, or sentence structure. Cough, cough. The Nemoidians.
Oh, yeah. Indeed. Now, you mentioned it quickly, Henson. The Darth Jar Jar theory. I'm just going to say this. Stupid theory. It should not have even been a thing. Seriously.
Like, if you're just joking about it, sure, but if you, like, genuinely believe it, you're a moron.
I mean, it's becoming really cringeworthy. I don't even know what idiot decided to make that theory. I don't care if it's a joke. It's just, I mean, this thing is so, like, repeated so much. Even Robot Chicken decided to make a parody out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And before the release of Force Awakens, somebody literally photoshopped Jar Jar all over the trailer and made her Darth Jar Jar. Like, why do you do that? That's not funny. It's cringeworthy.
It is, indeed. Yeah. So, any final things to mention on Jar Jar? Oh.
Wait, I had another thing to say about Jar Jar.
Okay.
He became a real, I'm having trouble coming with the word for it. He became a source of hatred for another group of prequel haters, how it should have ended, who, like I said, they really hate the prequels too.
Of course.
But they really did hate Jar Jar as well, and they even referenced the Darth Jar Jar thing in their Revenge of the Sith, how it should have ended.
Yep.
That's something. So, anyway, now let's move on to some few side characters we think are worth mentioning. These are not necessarily the main characters themselves. They're more like those that definitely should get some spotlight. So I put here a few of them. Obviously, Darth Maul as one of them, Watto, Viceroy Gunray, even Palpatine, even if it's for a bit. So what do you guys got to say on these characters?
Well, with Darth Maul, unlike what people like to say, he does have a character and a personality here. He may not be three-dimensional, but he does have a character. He's the type of Sith he's essentially a dog, basically. He has a one-track mind. All he cares about is, well, killing Jedi. And he's arrogant. And I'd also like to say that during the Duel of the Fates, with him and Qui-Gon, we have what I think is the perfect representation of the difference between the Jedi and Sith. It's when the Ray shield is up. Qui-Gon sits and meditates. Maul paces. So then, plus I'd just like to say that's one of the reasons why that fight has impact to it and meaning.
Oh, we'll get into it.
But, yeah, like I said, Maul is arrogant, and that's how he died, and that's what leads to his death, too.
Yeah. Anything else to mention on Maul?
Through his eyes, you can see that he clearly hates the Jedi.
We also see just how powerful one Sith can be. And not just any Sith, a mere apprentice.
Yes, that's...
So that just lets us know that, yeah, the Sith in their prime, even one who's just a dog on a leash, can cause some serious damage.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that damage later on. So yeah, for now... let's focus on a few other side characters. So what do you guys got to say on, say, Watto? The junk dealer.
Watto. People saying he's a racist stereotype of Jewish people. Was okay? How? Why?
Christ.
What?
Oh, God.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, aside from that, what do you got to say on Watto?
Didn't people say he was a caricature of Italian people, or was it Brooklyn or something?
I'm not trying to defend Watto because he's a slave owner, but he's a lot different from other slave owners, or I don't understand how slavery exactly works there.
We see that he's not a total asshole.
Yeah.
Like, he does have a soft spot for Anakin, even if it's just a tiny bit.
No Jabba the Hutt levels of
But
slavery.
then again, he's still an asshole because he makes him go on a pod race.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Tiny soft spot. But we still see how much of an asshole he is. He's a perfect representation of why you don't put so much of your shit into gambling.
Yes.
Because sometimes you lose.
His greed got the best of him. He got overconfident.
And it also shows why Qui-Gon trusting in the Force the way he does is the way to go.
Yes, indeed. Anything else to mention on Watto?
Not much.
Okay. What other characters you guys want to mention that you think are worth spotlighting?
Newt Gunray.
Yeah, what about him? What you gotta say on him?
I think
They
it's-
aren't stereotypes of Asians.
I think Newt Gunray is a perfect example of a corporate man. He thinks about what makes the most thing is most beneficial for him, and he's also a coward, which a lot of people describe him that way.
He's willing to do anything for a profit, even if it's at the expense of others.
Indeed.
Well, are Neimoidians just cowards, or is that Newt Gunray? Because a lot of sources suggest that Neimoidians are cowards.
They
Is that eventually?
they are usually greedy. Cowards depends. So there's that. Anything else to mention on Gondray?
No.
Okay. Any other characters want to mention?
You put Palpatine on the outline.
Well, if you guys have something to say on him, there's not much because he's not in the movie that much. But if you guys want to mention something about him, go ahead.
If you don't know, he's the Phantom Menace. Because apparently some people don't know what the Phantom Menace is referring to. Christ.
Well, there's that indeed.
And like I said in the Padme section, we see how good of a manipulator he is. How much he knows how the system works.
Yeah,
We don't
so
see too much of him, but his whole purpose is just becoming Chancellor, essentially.
what we can see is Palpatine knows how things work around the galaxy. Now, instead of trying to fix what is negative or how things are destructive, he instead tries to use those things against those people.
Not to mention, we see that he's the master manipulator, and it can work the best out of any situation. It didn't really matter if the Neimoidians won against Naboo. I mean, it's just as long as he got his ability to become a chancellor.
Because his whole plan, and this is something people have to, if you paid attention, it's clear as day, manufacture a crisis that'll lead to a vote of no confidence in Valorum, that'll lead to him becoming Chancellor. That's like the most basic summary of his plan.
Okay, this isn't literally said in the movie, but you could also see that Palpatine intentionally put a blockade in his own world so people would sympathize with him or Naboo because, Naboo is in a crisis. We must help Naboo. Palpatine's from Naboo. We must also support him. Like, he knows the psychology of how these people act. I mean, it literally isn't said in the movie, but if you're smart enough, and I bet a lot of people are, you can notice this.
Indeed. Anything else to mention on Palpatine?
No.
Okay, well, those are the characters. Now we get into the real main course of this video. The criticisms of the general Star Wars fandom. As well as a few of our own, if we got some. So...
You mean quotation criticisms.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the first quote-unquote criticism. The CGI!
God.
Yep.
You need a pioneer in these kinds of effects. It's almost as if the original... This is something that people have to fucking remember when it comes to George Lucas. He's all about pushing things forward. Not only, of course, he was going to use a ton of, CGI when needed, but also with CGI, just like with any other visual effect, is going to go through growing pains. It's not going to look good right off the gate. Films like this, Matrix, Jurassic Park, etc., needed to set the foundation so we could get to where we're at now, where the CGI looks fucking incredible and seamless.
Without the CGI of the prequels, we wouldn't have the CGI that we would see in like the Avengers or the MonsterVerse or any other films that has great CGI. They don't care. All they care about is their stupid practical effects. Yet we could argue that modern films, even in the current state of Star Wars, has pretty lackluster CGI, such cases as the sequels.
Mm-hmm. No,
and also Jar Jar was the first fully realized CG character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people say how bad the CGI in like the prequels are, specifically now Phantom Menace is, but this is ILM tech. I mean, this is not some regular CGI you see in some other movies. This is some like high-tech stuff with George Lucas's money inside it. Do you know what that means? Do you think George Lucas was simply with CGI without thinking, this looks fine? No, he wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell do you think he would find industrial light and magic in the first place, huh?
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna mention quickly, as you've been seeing in the screen at this moment, people, I'm showing all sorts of images that showcase how the movie was shot. And contrary to popular belief, where most of it was shot in blue screens and green screens with CGI, no, this movie actually has a lot of practical effects. Actually, more than the original trilogy combined. And I'm showing all these screenshots here for you guys to see.
Well, some of the prequel trilogy haters know that, but they don't care because, much like Quinn Idea said, those awful CGI overrides any practical effects, so they still keep the criticism.
I mean, I'm trying to wonder, how would you try to make a practical effect battle between Gungans and battle droids? I want to see how you do that, huh? How would you do that?
Without CGI?
Not to mention, without CGI, you wouldn't be able to tell this story the way it's presented. You can try to realize Coruscant with a whole lot of miniatures, but you can't. But it won't have the same impact if it was. You needed CGI to create plenty of the creatures we see in this movie.
If you can't get the same results effectively and cost-effectively with the quote-unquote practical effects, then it's not practical effects.
Yeah, practical. It isn't practical.
Yes, indeed. One of the criticisms prequel haters, like Stuckman, have is that the CGI itself looks dated as hell due to the overutilization of CGI and green/blue screens over practical effects, and lots of uncoordinated and unfocused CGI elements on screen at the same time.
I want you people to go back to 1925 and watch the original Lost World. And compare that stop motion to the likes of, say, any Ray Harryhausen film. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm trying to get at with the comparison of stop motion and CGI is that you have to have a starting point, because the stop motion of the original 1925 Lost World looks dated. Like, you don't believe that those dinosaurs are actual living creatures, because the movements are stiff. But you get to say someone like Harryhausen 30 years later, and the creatures move so much more lifelike. They feel alive.
Mm-hmm.
You could say the same about the Godzilla movies with the suitmation tech. I mean, some of the suits didn't look all that great during the Showa era, but they continued to progress into the Heisei era and some bits of the Millennium era until ultimately they started using CGI with like movies like Shin Godzilla.
Well, I mean, with something like that, it could be a case-by-case basis on when the suits actually looked good. But the point is, things progress. Things get better. But there has to be a starting point.
There is a famous line in the Phantom Menace trailer which says, every saga has a beginning. Same thing. Every technology has a beginning. Every film technique has a beginning. I guess they didn't read that. It's like poetry. It rhymes, people.
Sometimes when it comes to things like visual effects, films will have to bite the bullet in order to further develop the technology. Yes, the effects of the Phantom Menace can look dated, but here's the thing though. One, it doesn't look bad. Dated, yes, but bad, no. Not in a million years.
The only reason it looks dated is because the movie's 20 years old.
It was
So,
made over 20 years ago at this point.
mm-hmm.
Without the Phantom Menace, we wouldn't have shit like Endgame.
I mean, people tried to argue that the CGI looked bad even back then. No, it wasn't. I mean, I wasn't alive in 1999, but let's not make such atrocious arguments just because you hate the prequels.
Oh, speaking of people, so we all know how much prequel haters cannot tell the difference between CGI and practical effects because most of them say the movie's mostly CGI. I saw the documentary of the Phantom Menace in preparation of this podcast. Apparently, during the creation of the Phantom Menace's effects, George Lucas and his crew, they had the goal of making the CGI and the special effects look as real as possible to the point that the CGI characters could seamlessly interact with real people on camera. One person in the crew even said it was important for people to mix and match without really being able to tell that this was computer graphics or that this was a model or that this was a live action. So apparently the effects were purposefully crafted to be as good as possible with the goal to make it as difficult for the audience to tell what's real and what's fake on screen. So
they succeeded.
1999. I mean, you can't complain about visual effects that was from 1999. I mean, I actually heard some idiot try to say the T-1000 CGI in 1991 was better than the prequels.
Oh my
God. I mean, I love Terminator 2, but that's nonsense.
You know, the thing that really gets me is you have another major motion picture trilogy released during the prequels, The Lord of the Rings, which also used a lot of visual effect and green screen work. But the same people, at least as far as I've heard or have watched, have never complained about the Lord of the Rings use of CGI and green screens. But when it comes to the prequels, then it's a problem.
See, some prequel trilogy haters use the fact that Lord of the Rings came around this time period with their CGI. They used that against the prequels to say that they had better CGI than...
Even though the green screen work in Lord of the Rings is far more apparent than in prequels, because you can tell when the actors are in front of a green screen in Lord of the Rings.
I mean
it's harder to tell in the prequels.
Some people don't even know the difference between CGI and when they see a green screen, they think, oh, that's CGI. I literally saw people confusing the difference between CGI and green screen.
They used a lot of green screens in the original trilogy, but people seem to forget about that.
When they look at Padme's royal ship, they think that's CGI, but no, it's actually practical.
It's actually practical. I'm showing the images right here, you dumb fucks.
Okay, let's move on.
It's just a dumb argument, because who the fuck cares?
Alright, CJG, let's move on from this subject before our brain explodes.
Yeah.
The only people who care are a bunch of elitist film critics and filmmakers and a bunch of boomers.
Yeah.
Because films are a visual medium that are meant to be escapist entertainment.
Yeah.
So if we have CGI that can further push us into the realm of escapism, then I say, let's go.
Oh, I want to leave one final thing regarding the CGIs. So, final thing, and then we move on from that one. So, as you guys mentioned, apparently some people claim that movies that released the same time as prequels, that they think that they had better CGI in the prequels. Well, I'll show you guys here an example of a movie that came out almost at the same time as Phantom Menace. You know, the 1997 Spawn movie. Enjoy this scene! Enjoy this cringe! I hope you liked seeing this freaking abomination from fucking hell on screen.
Actually, I kind of gotta disagree. Spawn did have, for the most part, pretty good effects with CGI and practical effects.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a few flops here and there, but they did a pretty good job with their effects.
Yeah, but you got to admit that freaking big horn demon at the end in hell.
Oh, you mean Malbosia?
Yeah, that shit looks horrible.
Or the hell, or whatever dimension they are in, clearly looks like it's green screen.
It's
like
hell.
That hell does not look like a real place. You're not trying to convince me that it looks real.
Yeah. So, sorry guys, you want to criticize the Phantom Menace for having bad CGI? There's movies with far worse CGI released at the same time.
Yeah, that's a pretty awful looking version of the Eighth Circle of Hell, Malboj.
So, yeah, indeed. So anyway, now we move on from the CGI. So,
I got a complaint that I think we should probably address, like how OT fanboys mention that the prequels reference the original trilogy incorrectly.
How?
I'm not entirely sure. I just heard them say that they referenced the original trilogy. Original trilogy incorrectly. I've heard this from Phalis, CinemaSins. CinemaSins usually says it when I remember one example. They said how they incorrectly used the "I got a bad feeling" because the situation that caused the bad feeling was really obvious that anybody would have had that bad feeling, whereas the original trilogy was a bit more subtle. At least that was their argument.
It's not even legitimate criticism songs. I mean, I don't think they're even serious about most of the things they say.
I doubt it. That's a new one to me. So, yeah. So, you already mentioned one of the criticisms, King, from CinemaSins, which
It was from CinemaSins and Phalis that they said they referenced the original trilogy incorrectly.
Yeah, that's just stupid. So we don't even need to focus on that one because that's just stupid. So one of the bigger criticisms is that the Phantom Menace is very poorly written, resulting in a story that makes no sense, characters that are badly written with bad dialogue coming from them, lack of tension or real stakes, poor pacing which leads to tedious and uninteresting moments, and lots more.
It's kind of hypocritical since the original trilogy had some awful dialogue too.
Not to mention, I could understand this movie just fine as a 2-year-old.
So yeah, what do you guys think of that criticism?
I mean, that doesn't really mean anything. It's a bunch of words jumbled to create a sentence. I mean, what does that even mean? What does that even mean?
Well, they claim that because the movie is poorly written, has a story that makes no sense, badly written characters.
Yes, we've heard this from people like Plinkett, Stuckman, Nostalgia Critic, Jeremy Johns, Confused Matthew, Quinn Ideas, Little Karibo, Team 4-Star, and the list goes on.
Yeah, many people...
How is it badly written? Why? That doesn't make sense. Like, what? Lack of tension or pacing, like, these words don't mean anything.
Apparently they don't care about what happens in a movie.
Like, you can't just throw random words and expect someone to understand what you're talking about. You gotta give context or reason for the statement you're making. You can't just expect people to agree with you when you throw random words.
Well,
no, you sound like an idiot. Just shut up if you're gonna not give the reason.
Well, they do. Well, there is one actually. The poor pacing with the tedious and uninteresting moments. One of those, it stems from the fact that people, well, they hate the politics scenes on Coruscant because they criticize them for not being understandable and for being boring to the average viewer.
Now,
Yeah.
to quote my dad, who likes the prequels, you need the political scenes because they're important. The trilogy is about the fall of the Republic. Unless you're like Gensrai 1, who wanted essentially the SWTOR trailers in movie form because he's an idiot. We need to see the Republic fall. We need to see just how crafty the Sith are. We need to see just how much the Jedi have fallen. The idea that the political scenes are hard to follow and kids won't like them, hey, jackasses, none of you were kids when you watched the movies like we were. And guess what? We could understand all of it just fine. So you're all just fucking morons.
I mean, here's the thing. It's called the Republic. How does it work? It's some kind of a government, right? We gotta know how it works. Now, here's the problem with the Empire, the original trilogy I personally had. There was only one scene in all three movies that actually explain about the inner workings of the Empire, and that was the scene from the Death Star. Now, other than that, we don't have any high-ranking Imperial officers talking to each other or planning or any discussions. This is an actual improvement. I mean, you can't just call yourself some galactic big government without showing how it works, right?
How the government works, yeah. So
For the most part, in the original trilogy, we don't know what's going on outside of our main characters. We don't know what the galaxy's going through. We are told the Empire is bad, and we see them do bad things, sure, but we don't see it on a galactic-wide scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, they blow up Alderaan, but why don't we see them, like, do more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we see them affect a few planets, but we don't see them affect the galaxy. We don't know what the galaxy actually looks like under Imperial rule.
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame the original trilogy for this, because it wasn't telling that story.
Mm-hmm.
But for the prequels, with the story Lucas had in mind, we need to see that.
Mm-hmm. Can I also mention that it's funny how people claim that politics don't belong at all in Star Wars, even though they were there since the very first Star Wars movie with the scene that Dowan mentioned. That's the ironic part. Oh, wait, I guess people forgot because they were focused on Vader choking the Imperial officer.
The whole thing about the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy is basically based on Vietnam War, about Richard Nixon, Watergate. I'm not going to get into deeper with that because I don't even know how that works. But essentially, George Lucas said that things on Star Wars as a general was based on the Vietnam War, and you can see hints about that. And when you're talking about war, you're going to have politics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't have war without politics. Is this an easy concept to understand, or are people just idiots?
Not to mention, this is essentially a fantasy, science fantasy is what you could consider Star Wars. So we need to know how the galaxy works, different civilizations work. Because in order for this to be a believable world, we need to see how things work.
And it makes sense that George Lucas would have politics because he was borrowing inspiration from the Roman Republic and how it turned into an empire during the reign of Julius Caesar and Augustus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Another thing I gotta mention about the Coruscant scenes, one of the criticisms for being boring is, this comes from Stuckman. He claims that all the Coruscant scenes are just people sitting, walking, and talking, which makes it boring as nothing interesting is going on in the background. Just pure, uninteresting talking.
Well, then by that logic, Game of Thrones would be really boring because that's a good chunk of the politics going on when you don't count the backstabbing.
That's true.
Yeah, I think people are just randomly drawing the word boring because they don't like the movies.
Yeah.
I don't think it has any meaning. Then again, what does have meaning?
I guess there is that. So, anything else to mention on the politics?
Nah.
It's not only is it necessary, but it also doesn't last very long within the movie itself.
I mean, the Senate scene. How long does Senate scene last?
Average of 15-20 minutes runtime. In the 2
Well, I mean, no, the Senate sequence
Well, I meant more in the Coruscant in general, not just the Senate meeting. But if we're talking about the Senate meeting itself, then that's like actually 3 to 4 minutes.
Not to mention, the plot is still moving during during the entirety of Coruscant. You know, us seeing just how corrupt the Republic is, Padme being pushed into going back to Naboo, us seeing how the Jedi Council operates, seeing what's gonna happen with Anakin, finding out about midichlorians. Shit happens that's important to the plot.
Yeah, you need these political scenes to build world building, which, again, I have to bring this up, is that when you don't have these kind of things, you're completely lost in this universe, and you end up with things like The Force Awakens and the rest of the sequel trilogy. We don't know the full gravity of the stakes because we don't know the political climate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a republic. Why is the republic bad? Why is it useless? I mean, it is the fault of the republic. We need to understand why the republic fell.
Mm-hmm. Or why it's just falling.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just say republic is bad because I said so. No, that's not interesting.
And that's not how the world works.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a lazy writing. Fortunately for us, George Lucas did not go through the lazy writing. I mean, you can criticize the way he writes, but you can't definitely say he's lazy because he isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed.
The thing to keep in mind is that everything we see in the movie is important.
Mm-hmm. Yep, indeed. Speaking of things that are considered unimportant or not needed for the movie, so some people criticize that the Tatooine section of Phantom Menace, besides being boring, well, they say they're boring because of how disconnected they are from the movie's main plot regarding the conflict of Naboo. I bet this one's from Confused Matthew.
Actually, no, because Tatooine is an important process because you meet Anakin Skywalker and you learn about his conflict. Second, you need to Tatooine was just a temporary location where they were trying to avoid the Trade Federation because, I mean, the Hutts control it, right?
Tatooine is controlled by the Hutts, yes.
So the Trade Federation cannot just interfere like whatever they want.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, and then they have to escape. Now the whole plot in Tatooine is basically Qui-Gon and the gang trying to find a way to escape. And that's where Anakin comes in place. You know, blah blah blah, do the pod race, blah blah blah, win the thing, get the money to fix. I mean, I think this is an easy concept and a crucial concept. I mean, you can't stay in Tatooine forever, right? And it's not like you can just simply get out of the planet whenever you want. I mean, the ship is damaged, for God's sake.
Yep, indeed. So, yep. Another criticism that people like to bring up on the Phantom Menace is that it has plenty of plot holes that ruin the whole movie.
Like what?
Well,
yes, let's go through these quote-unquote plot holes.
Yeah, so
When we
according
talk
to...
about the sequel trilogy plot holes, we actually go through them, but okay.
Okay, so here's the plot holes in question. So apparently, and all of these are from Confused Matthew, by the way, because he's the one that claims that the movie is riddled with plot holes. That he claims that the Trade Federation and Naboo are both part of the Republic, and that it makes zero sense that the Republic would be negotiating with itself to withdraw the blockade from a Republic-controlled planet like Naboo.
No, the Trade Federation is basically holding Naboo hostage to get a reaction out from the Galactic Republic, the main government itself. It's not, I mean... I can't process this stupidity.
Oh, you wanna get even more brain farts? Confused Matthew. The next one is Confused Matthew is confused as to why the Republic has a queen, as in he claims Queen Amidala is leading the Republic.
Naboo is a constitutional monarchy. Now, this concept does exist.
Yeah, you want to make a good comparison? Look at Elder Scrolls, specifically with Skyrim. Skyrim, for the most part, is part of the Cyrodiilic Empire, and they have an emperor, yet their own country has Jarls, which are each considered kings of their own respective provinces. That's how it works.
Okay, maybe not a constitutional there is an elected monarchy. I mean, that does exist, right?
It does.
Oh, what? Queen does not get elected. Okay. Like, who are you to decide whether queen doesn't get elected or not? I mean, even if it doesn't in the real world, it's a fictional universe.
Also, where the fuck did the movie say that the Queen of Naboo is ruling the Republic? The fucking movie doesn't say that shit. In fact, we say the ruler of the Republic is Chancellor Valorum. You fucking moron!
This is why nobody takes you seriously, confused Matthew.
Pay attention.
Oh,
I know that is a hard concept, but
yeah. Oh, speaking of hard concepts, so then Confused Matthew claims another plot hole is that he claims that it's stupid that Qui-Gon and his crew cannot buy a hyperdrive for their ship, but the slave Anakin can not only build C-3PO, but also an entire pod racer by himself with his own hands and the parts he found for them.
that worked. What?
He's been spending years working on this, and he has expertise in mechanics. Not to mention he has access to scavenging parts on Tatooine.
Wait, so is he confusing building a droid and building a hyperdrive?
He's basically saying that it's stupid that off-worlders cannot buy a single freaking ship part, but a slave boy can not only build a droid with his own hands and a pod racer, but can even get the parts for himself to do so. That's what he's basically saying.
Number one, they don't have the currency. Even if let's assume that Anakin did buy C-3PO. Do you know what it says? Republic credits are useless in Tatooine. Or is Confused Matthew intentionally ignoring detail to push a certain agenda?
Possibly that one. So
the lazy Gen Xers can't pay attention to these films.
Oh, speaking of paying attention, so apparently another plot hole from Confused Matthew, that how did Anakin penetrate the Trade Federation ship shields and enter the hangar, despite the other Naboo starfighters being unable to do so?
Because it was controlled by a freaking droid. Maybe?
Yeah, could be. So, though he probably means the deflector shields, being present in the hangar bay entrances. That's probably what he means. Which, Anakin possibly arrived inside the hangar when some of the ships were leaving, and the shields had to be disabled in some way.
You can see things before it happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. Force abilities?
Maybe that too. Maybe that too. So, there is that. Now, okay, that's the end of the plot holes. And at least we confirmed that 4 of them are complete total nonsense. The other one we left it hanging. This next one. Oh, and this one goes to what you guys were talking about, Anakin. That Confused Matthew criticizes Anakin's line of asking Padme if she's an angel for not only sounding cringe-worthy for a boy to say that to a pretty girl, but also because everything he said about it seems to have been invented by Anakin to gain Padme's affection.
I remember Quinn making the same criticism too.
Oh.
Okay. I really don't want to use the EU, but this is in-universe stuff, we have to say. Angels do exist, so shut up.
Well, even if we didn't use the expanded universe, okay, think about it. Like, it's not out of the realm possibility that there's an alien species that are angels in Star Wars, and he even says the specific planet's name and everything, Yego. That's not something you just dream up out of nowhere immediately, but...
Yeah. Not to mention, Anakin doesn't lie at any point in that movie. Why would he lie then?
That too.
Like, the whole point of his character is that he's, one, a child. What you see is what you get with him. Like, my God.
Yep.
Like, this is how at least a kid, not saying all kids, but a kid may act. He knows something, so he'll say it. It may sound awkward, and it may even sound cringeworthy. But you know what? Some kids just don't know what cringe is. They'll just say it.
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah, but that's PT haters for you. So, there is that. Next, this was one that you mentioned, Henson, quickly when talking about Padme. Apparently, the acting and dialogue feels monotone and lifeless, particularly in the Jedi characters and Queen Amidala.
That already said my sentiment. She only does it. She only sounds monotoned when she's under the guise of the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the decoy.
You could also argue for the Jedi that they sound somewhat monotone because they're monks and they're very stoic.
Honestly, none of them sound monotoned. Maybe not that energetic, but I would not say they're monotoned. They know how to keep their emotions in check.
There isn't really something to be excited during the movie, right? Other than the pod race, because there's a whole crisis on a freaking planet is happening. People are arguing, like corporation is going insane. Like, who's gonna go out and say, "Hooray! Corporations is invading a planet"? Do you think someone's gonna do that?
No. So, there's that. Oh, speaking of emotions, they also say that the characters have no real emotion, which is why they show no agency to the stakes of the movie. This one is from Wise.
Yeah, no. Let's just skip this.
Getting confused, Matthew also having a problem with the Jedi not making any attempts to get rid of slavery on Tatooine.
We'll get into that one, King. Don't worry. We'll get into that one. We're close to it. So, next one is that Stuckman claims that the pod race is stale because of it having plenty of left-to-right camera panning shots with little different angle shots.
No, there's the top, the left, Stuckman, you don't sound smart because you mention camera angles. You sound like a pseudo-intellectual brat that doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, indeed. So, there's that. This next one, this one's gonna piss you off though, to no end. So, confused Matthew, he and others, they criticize the term Sith because they have no fucking idea what it is.
He's an idiot.
Yeah, he's an idiot. Let's just... he's Sith, okay? Shady-looking guys with red lightsabers would use dark side of the Force. I think this is a easy enough concept to understand.
Wake up and smell the coffee, you morons.
Or how about just that they're the opposite of the Jedi and their nemesis? It's as simple as that. Like, seriously. Like, my God. So
You don't need to read the EU, like Tales of the Jedi, to understand what a Sith is. Why am I expecting too much from these people?
Speaking of expecting too much from them. Next criticism from multiple people, this is the one you were talking about, King, that the Jedi are sitting around their console just talking, not doing anything to solve the conflict on Naboo, or track down the Sith, or do anything about the slavery problems around the galaxy.
Okay, first, Tatooine is controlled by the Hutts. Republic cannot simply interfere like they want. The Jedi are under the control of the Senate, right? Is it?
The Republic, they do rule over them. Like, they basically tell them what they can do, what they cannot do for the Republic, yes.
And Tatooine is not a Republic planet.
It's in the Outer Rim, which even the movie says it.
Literally, Shmi says like this. The Republic does not exist out here. We must survive on our own. You can turn the clip if you want.
I can't believe there's still slavery in the galaxy. The Republic's anti-slavery laws are...
The Republic doesn't exist out here. We must survive on our own.
So, yeah. Also, regarding the Jedi doing nothing... So, one, the Jedi, they don't believe Qui-Gon that the Sith have returned, first and foremost. Only until he dies where they actually believe him. That's one. And number two, even if they wanted to do something, again, the Republic's not going to allow them to literally send a fucking battalion of Jedi to Naboo, as some people want.
Because that would start a conflict with the Hutt.
I see.
Didn't the title quote exactly show that Olorum discreetly sent Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon? Discreetly. He didn't just like, we're gonna send them to the Trade Federation as ambassadors. No, this was a secret. Read the title crawl.
Yeah. So, also, now that's for Tatooine. In regards to Naboo, yes, you said that one, like discreetly. And even after they return to Coruscant, the Jedi Council cannot really interfere. Like, the Jedi cannot really interfere. They can send a few, 1-2 Jedi, Master and Apprentice, but they cannot send a fucking squad or battalion of Jedi. Because not only they not want to waste, waste a lot of Jedi into it, because they probably don't think that the Sith actually returned. They need proof on that shit. That's one. And number two, because if they send multiple Jedi, well, let's just say that it will make it seem that the Republic is officially supporting the Naboo against the Trade Federation, even though the Republic, as we saw in the Senate, they have their own fucking shit to worry about with choosing the next chancellor.
Bureaucrats and corporations.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that I gotta mention. Anything else to mention on this one?
Attention to the movie. Stop asking dumb questions. Oh, we still have more, right?
Oh yeah. So yeah.
How much more?
Oh, well, let's get into one of the bigger ones. Oh, this is one of the favorites from the Prequel Trilogy haters to bitch about. Midichlorians!
Well, it was.
Oh yes, like how Quinn said that it made him no longer understand what the Force is.
Okay, so what are the direct complaints about midichlorians?
So they basically claim that the midichlorians are the Force, that it completely demystifies the Force as it was believed in Episode 4 that was only a mystical force binding the whole galaxy together and not something scientific doing that. Thanks to midichlorians, the living beings that can become Force sensitives are limited to natural selection, whereas before it was more so that anyone could be a Force sensitive depending on who the individual is as a living being.
This is not.
The Force was never established like that, though.
This is never. I'm saying this from a player's book, but it just reinforces. Now, okay, I'm not using EU to justify. I'm using a line from there to make it easier for people to understand. Now, this is what the player's book says. A common misconception held that midichlorians were force-carrying particles, when in fact they function more as translators, interlocutors of the role of the Force. Now, what this essentially means that midichlorians are not the Force itself. It allows the individual to connect to the Force. I thought this concept was easy to understand. No?
No. No, because it's midichlorians, maybe we might need a bit of expanded universe to explain. However, I'll do my best to basically go with just the movie right now. The movie itself never says, first of all, movie never says the midichlorians are the Force. It literally mentions them as two different things. It says the midichlorians, like without them, they have no knowledge of the Force. They basically help them to understand, talk, or connect with the Force. So right off the bat, they're not the Force. That's number one. Now, number two, it's regarding demystifying the Force. We still don't know how the Force 100% works. We still don't know.
Not to mention, even in the original trilogy, there was some biological connection between the people and the Force. As Luke said, the Force is strong in my family. I have it, my father has it, and so do you, my sister, Leia.
Mm-hmm. I mean, here's the thing. The Force is so... What is mystical? Like, isn't that mystical? Like, seriously, it does actually exist, right? You can't really say it's just mystical if it actually exists and can do something.
Well, even if we assume that the Force exists, and here's the thing. When something is described as mystical, it's basically something that is basically out of the realm of let's just say like it has some sort of mystery in it. Like it's not something that's gonna be very clearly explained. By the way, the midichlorians are actually a measure of somebody's potential in regards to the connection to the Force. By the way, that's actually the most.
Of course, if there's like a mystical view of the Force, then there must also be a scientific perspective of the Force. I mean, there could be various perspectives on a topic, right?
There could be, yeah. But that's something we'll get into more detail when we tackle the Darth Plagueis book at a later day as well.
I would like to add that it's not really explored in the movie, but I do think it is there. So, through the midichlorians, living beings can interact, or they can hear the will of the Force through them, thanks to the midichlorians. There's a reason why it seems that's only the case for light side users. It further emphasizes the point that living beings aren't supposed to use the dark side. And this is something that, taking a line from episode 3 of Plagueis manipulating midichlorians, we aren't supposed to use the dark side. The Force doesn't want us using the dark side. So the only way for Darksiders to use the dark side is to go against the will of the Force, to manipulate the midichlorians, if you will.
Yeah.
So it only adds to the fact that it only just adds to the lore of the Force, basically.
Yeah. It expands on it. Also, midichlorians do not fucking ruin the Force. If you want a good example of something ruining the Force, just look at how the Force was portrayed in the sequels. Just look at that shit.
It was portrayed more as a superpower, and then again, people who watch this, who defend the sequels, say that the Force has always been some kind of like superpower.
No. Even their precious Last Jedi says that the Force is not a power you have. It fucking has Jake Alien Milker literally saying,
"The Force is not a power you have. It's not about lifting rocks. It's the energy between all things, a tension, a balance that binds the universe together."
Like, even Jake Ellenmaker says that shit.
These groups of people, I usually refer to them as mystery tards. Now, what is a mystery tard, you might ask? The mystery tards are the type of people you should say, "Oh, this concept was so interesting because it was so mysterious." You know those type of people, right?
Yes.
There are people, like, seriously, there's nothing wrong about exploring more things about a certain topic. Like, keeping a mystery doesn't do anything. Like, for example, Boba Fett is a great example, which we'll deeply talk about in Attack the Clones, but they also complain about him appearing as a child because he was mysterious. That's why he was interesting, which I don't understand how, and that's just stupid. For me, getting more information about a certain topic is more interesting than just keeping it a secret. I'm looking at you, Half-Life 3. But, okay.
As long as it's executed well, of course, and it's not complete total nonsense added into it, the sequels with the Force. So...
Well, to be fair, there are some things that are meant not to be explored too much, like the Cthulhu mythos, because that requires you to not know things for it to be effective. But
Well, I mean-
then there are some, but things like Star Wars, you're going to have to explore things, and so you can know how the universe works.
Well, I mean, the thing with the Lovecraft in general is that with how those plots are set up, the characters can't find out more. But with something like Star Wars, we can. And in my opinion, as a writer myself, if you can tell a good story, then tell it. Now, of course, yes, can we get some really stupid stuff in there? Yes.
Xenomorph Covenant.
Or we can, like, cough cough, what they did to the space jockeys in the Alien prequels. But if there's a good story to be told, then tell it.
Oh yeah, this is more related to sequels, but J.J. Abrams uses this tactic a lot, which he calls the mystery boxes. Now, the problem with people like J.J. Abrams is it throws a lot of mystery and it amounts to nothing. Essentially, mystery for the sake of mystery, which is annoying for the audience and it does nothing for the story. So,
despite what he likes to say, that is not how you tell a good story. Especially if you plan on having it go on for more than one entry.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to say, just having a mystery doesn't make something interesting. Sometimes solving that mystery is what makes it more interesting, you know? That's why I'm talking about the mystery tards.
There's that, indeed. So, anything else to mention on midichlorians?
Nah.
Basically, the midichlorians don't destroy anything and only seem to add to it.
Midichlorians itself is not the Force. Or does it carry the Force?
So, there's that. Okay, next one. So, apparently this is one that I've heard from few PT haters that apparently the B1 battle droids are literally grunts. They can easily be taken care of. They give no real tension or suspense or emotion in the movie compared to the stormtroopers in the original trilogy, where due to being real people and not droids, they can give some tension and suspense to the movie.
Stormtroopers, tension. Those guys who can't even really aim.
And they also die pretty easily, just as much as droids.
Yeah.
Seriously.
At least the droids have those cold, non-emotion voice. Okay, that's only for episode 1 because...
Roger.
Yeah, episode 3 starts to show the droids joke around, and I mean, other tie-in media like TCW basically destroys, but that's another story. But at episode 1, they seem to be pretty much emotionless droids, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. You know something funny, guys, regarding the B1 battle droids? You know how much people say, oh, the stormtroopers were better than the battle droids, because those actually gave real tension and suspense and stuff. They don't compare to the droids don't compare to stormtroopers. Fun fact, check the documentary of the Phantom Menace, some of the behind-the-scenes videos. George Lucas literally was talking to Steven Spielberg. He showcased one of the battle droid models to Steven Spielberg, and he told Spielberg that the droids, the B1 battle droids, are meant to be the new stormtroopers of this generation.
Just one of our battle droids, actually.
Look
at this.
Cool.
This is the new stormtrooper.
Oh,
this is our new stormtrooper.
But in a way, he's the old model, replaced by Star Wars being the new stormtrooper.
Yeah, because what you don't realize is that these guys really are not very efficient. These things, Jedi cut them down like they're butter, and they really are pretty useless.
Yeah.
And they are, because they're equally as incompetent.
And equally as weak and effective against those that not only can handle themselves, but can even do damage. Like, seriously, fucking Prequel Trilogy haters, like, you really need to make some research.
And seriously, stormtroopers, intimidating. I mean, if you play a Star Wars video game and you see a stormtrooper, are they intimidating, or do you just like, another one of you? Blast them. Like, what is your reaction when you see a stormtrooper in a Star Wars video game?
I just say, target practice.
Yeah, that's what you say. You're not afraid of stormtrooper.
Yeah, seriously. Unless it's
not to mention, if we're looking at a single droid or stormtrooper, they aren't a threat. The point is they're threatening in numbers. Or they're a threat in numbers. Which is why, when they go to Naboo, they split up. Because, and this is aimed directly at you, Plinkett, if they went out lightsabers ablaze, they would have been slaughtered.
Indeed. So, there is that indeed. So, anything else to mention on the droids?
No.
Okay. Next one is that Yoda being portrayed as a humorless, witless, dry-ass, boring Jedi was an awful idea. Where's the play for episode 5, Yoda?
Here's the context. Yoda in episode 5 was doing that intentionally to test Luke. That isn't his default personality.
Yes, his humor is mostly a facade.
Yep. But apparently PT haters forgot that one. But that's them in a nutshell. So, yeah.
Or maybe Yoda developed a personality after all those years. Like, what's the year difference between the prequels and Empire Strikes Back? Let's see.
I mean, if we're starting from Phantom Menace, it'd be like 30 years.
Let's see, 32 plus 1 to 2 is 10, 13, and another 1932. Yeah, 35 years. That's almost 40 years, man.
Point is, people change. But of course, that should never be used as a crux. Cough, cough. We see how Yoda develops throughout the trilogy, but in terms of the Phantom Menace, he's the head of the council, and through him, we see, again, as I've said before, we see how the Jedi have lost their way. Yoda himself has lost his way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, Yoda was testing Luke in Empire Strikes Back. Yoda wasn't always meant to be this funny guy with, like, hitting droids with a stick.
Yep. Indeed. Yeah. So there is that. Next one, and then we move on to Plinkett. There are a few others, but we can tackle them when we tackle Plinkett himself. So this next one is one that has been echoed a lot by plenty of people. They do throw this one at episodes 2 and 3 as well, but episode 1 is the one that they throw at the most. That episode 1 should have not existed. It should have just been episodes 2 and 3, with the Qui-Gon not being the movie and instead being Obi-Wan and Anakin argument, fitting into this narrative of episode 1 being worthless to the saga.
No, because episode 1 shows the introduction of Sid after 1,000 years. Episode 1 also shows the Obi-Wan and Anakin meeting each other. Episode 1 also shows...
To put it in simple terms, episode 1 is the setup which you need in order for the payoff to actually work. Because if you skip episode 1, and then this is one of the reasons I brought this point up earlier, so much of Anakin's turn to the dark side starts with this movie. You skip it, you miss that.
Yep.
And of course, not to mention all the stuff involving how Palpatine became Chancellor, how the Jedi are, why they act the way they do in the later films, why Anakin is treated the way he is in the later films.
Also, how the hell Anakin and Padme know each other, as well as Obi-Wan also knowing both of them.
Or why Anakin even likes Padme outside of her looks.
Yeah.
Or how Jar Jar is even a representative of Naboo.
That too.
Or why Padme would even trust him with that role while she's gone.
Yeah.
Or it kind of implies, like, in episode 2, it implies, like, not implies, Dooku also references, Qui-Gon's dead. I mean, who is this Qui-Gon man? Who is this Qui-Gon guy Dooku is referencing? You don't know if you didn't watch episode 1.
Apparently the master of Obi-Wan. Oh wait, we didn't see episode 1. We don't know.
Point is, there is a lot of weird methods people use when they say watch the story. Some people say skip episode 1, which I think is the
machete order.
Oh.
Yeah, like watch 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, and 6, which is the single most retarded thing I ever heard.
Or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That too.
Yeah, that's also stupid.
My god, yeah.
Like, either watch it in order of release or watch it in chronological order.
Yeah, watch it 5, 5.
You can't skip episode 1. For the same reason you can't skip episode 4.
It is the beginning. Essentially, episode 1 is the reason why everything else happens in the other movies. You can't just say, I don't like this movie, so we're skipping it. No, that's not how this works.
This is
Because as we laid out, episode 1 is the setup that you need in order to understand why the payoff is as impactful as it is.
Yep. Indeed. So this criticism is just stupid. So anything else to mention on this stupidity?
We have more stupidity, right? How many?
We're getting into the mother love of stupidity. The one Plinkett's review of the Phantom Menace.
The climax.
Joy.
Yes. So I got the list here. Now some of these we already tackled, so we don't need to get into detail, but let's get into them. So, Mr. Plinkett, the originator of the Prequel Trilogy Hate Train, or at least one of the originators, confused Matthew was the other one. So, first thing he says, that the entire movie makes no sense plot-wise. Yeah, we already tackled that one.
And for so people understand, that's his entire argument.
That it literally
Or
makes
that's
sense.
his thesis statement, if you will. And if your thesis statement doesn't work, then your entire fucking essay fails. So what I'm saying it is, right off the get-go, his review failed.
Yeah, well, fails. There's that. Next thing he says, that there is no protagonist that the audience can relate to.
That's a little crap.
Well,
I mean, there could be multiple main characters. I don't know. Qui-Gon, Anakin, Padme. These 3 are the central.
Yeah, but apparently he doesn't understand that. And speaking of that, he claims that there is no main character in the movie at all. That it is difficult to figure out who it is.
There can be more than one main character.
Yeah, but he says there's not a single main character. He claims that.
Single, that means there is none. So let's see. Have you ever watched movies like Avengers?
You can't have an ensemble cast.
Who is the main character of Avengers? I don't know. Who's the single? Yeah. You do realize how stupid this sounds when you apply to Avengers, right?
or look at Dragon Ball Super Broly. The main characters are Goku and Vegeta.
And Broly also, if you think about it, but
Yep. Indeed. Oh, next one. He claims that the movie has no clear villain.
There's a lot. There's New Gunray. There's Maul. There's Sidious behind the scenes. But is he doing this on purpose?
Sounds like it. I mean, fucking Darth Maul. How can you not get more obvious than that?
It seems like the guy is intentionally doing this, even though he knows what he's saying is BS.
Yeah, indeed. But I guess that's Plinkett for you. Then he claims that there is a crisis in the movie, which we never see. Sounds like Dolwan's losing brain cells.
We all are, General. We all are.
Oh,
no, you guys are losing your brain cells. I'm losing my sanity.
Oh, don't worry, Dolwan. We'll get into one portion that will literally piss the fuck out of you. I know which one.
Break me?
Oh, yeah, you will get into it. So, but here's another one that will piss you off. Plinkett says that he has not read or played any other Star Wars video game, book, comic, whatever. Basically, he's cheating on the Hispanic universe.
You don't... So is he saying that you have to read the tie-in or experience the Thai media to understand this movie?
I think he hinted at it, but he says that he probably does it in the next two Plinkett reviews. But no, here he just said that he didn't read any of that shit. That's what he said.
Okay, that's random. Why would he say stuff that is unrelated?
He probably was trying to say that he's not experienced in Star Wars. Which I
we can tell.
Yeah. And then Plinkett has these weird dark comedy skits of him. He checks his Star Wars toys and he has a hooker tied up in his wall. And he also decides to put pizza rolls in a letter. What the fuck was that? Yeah, he actually did that shit. You remember that, Henson, don't you? When we saw that.
Wasn't there also some bestiality jokes?
Yeah, though I think episode 2 has those.
Yeah, I don't think there were any in the episode 1 review.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But the hooker was definitely there with its ear there tied up in the.
Yeah, it's black comedy, so it's whatever. Do I think it belongs in the review?
No.
No, because it doesn't serve a purpose. I mean, this just goes into a larger problem I have when reviewers are playing characters, is that they do things that just do not belong in a review, or that distract from the review. Like, yes, Plinkett himself is a character, but that begs the question, what from this review should I be taking seriously? Like, should I be taking any of his points seriously if this is how he's portraying himself?
Maybe. I don't know, because
not like it really matters, because he believes all the shit he's saying in the video. We know that for a fact.
Yeah.
So what is he? Is he literally comparing tying a person? Is he comparing watching the movie as a torture, like tying someone? What is he saying?
No, he's not that smart. She's just doing it for shock value.
Yeah.
The only reason I can think of. Because like I said, Plinkett himself is supposed to be a character.
Though you could argue some of it is indeed the class's own personality and mentality.
Like, I mean, Stakasa himself is a pretty bad human being in general, so I can't really differentiate between like him or Plinkett. Sometimes they are literally the same.
Yeah, you can at times say that, tell that, yeah. So there's that. Oh, next one. Plinkett is asking the movie who is doing what, where, and why. Because
Just watch the movie and pay attention, you moron.
well, I guess he couldn't do that because then Plinkett.
I don't want to do God.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Henson, this is one you mentioned how Plinkett claims that the Jedi should have faced the entire army in the Trade Federation ship and steal one of the smaller ships to go to Coruscant. You already tackled that one.
Yeah, it's stupid. It makes no sense because, yeah, Jedi are skilled, but they aren't invincible.
Yeah. Oh, he also claims that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan separating on the transport ships, to going to Naboo is stupid. He also claims that shit.
Okay. The reason why they have to separating does make sense is when one gets captured, the other has a higher possibility of not getting captured, making it easier for one to rescue the queen. This is common sense.
Yeah.
So instead of getting two of them captured, divide that by 50%.
Yep, indeed. Then Plinkett claims that the entire Naboo invasion is just a plot device made by Lucas, and then he gave up on it halfway through. That's what he claims Lucas did.
No, that's the driving thing of the movie. I hate this.
And Michael Tesler says our generation is stupid and lazy.
Oh, and then Plinkett claims that Obi-Wan is literally imagining what he's saying to Boss Nass regarding that once the Trade Federation takes control of the surface, they will go after the Gungan city. So he claims that Obi-Wan imagined all that shit when he was talking to Boss Nass about
No,
It's all common sense.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna take over some kind of planet, I will take over it completely. Why would I leave a force that might have even the slightest possibility of rebelling or protesting against me? Like, does that make any sense? Or what would you do if you're a dictator? Would you leave people who are constantly complaining or rebel against you?
Also, Obi-Wan at this point would have most likely have seen enough of the galaxy, being with Qui-Gon and all, to know what certain things mean. If you are, then again, you don't even have to travel to know this kind of common sense. If you are invading a planet, then wouldn't you think that if there are a group of people who do pose a threat, that they wouldn't deal with them as soon as fucking possible? It's funny. Those guys at Red Letter Media claim to be filmmakers, and yet they don't understand storytelling, at all.
I don't think they understand what common sense is.
Oh,
of course they don't.
Oh, speaking of...
Aren't some of them actually failed filmmakers?
Oh, yeah.
Stakasa is a failed film creator.
He's a failed film director, as far as I remember. So
that explains why he hates George Lucas so much.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, speaking of them not having any idea how movies work, how about them not understanding how science fiction works? Because Plinkett asks, how will the Nubian ship be sitting ducks without deflector shields?
I don't know. If there's no deflector shield, you get constantly blasted by laser bolts and then kaboom!
May I remind you that Red Letter Media, particularly Stoklasa, claim they're fans of Star Trek?
I remember clearly that even Star Trek had ships that fire lasers.
And use deflector shields.
Not to mention, as someone who's seen a good chunk of Star Trek, because most of the time is spent on the Enterprise. Talking, of course, mostly of TOS and Next Gen. During space battles, the shields play an important role. Every time the shields are hit, their power goes down. And once it hits 0, they have no shields. So, the shields are kind of important.
Yeah, in science fiction in general. There's plenty of science fiction franchises that depict spacecraft using deflector shields during battle. Just happens that Star Wars is one of those.
Yeah.
But this is Plinkett, and you know how it is. Oh, and then he claims that R2-D2 did jack shit to help the Nubian ship escape the blockade.
Didn't you see the freaking droid using his tools to fix the ship, while the other useless astromechs were all shot and exploded?
I think he didn't see it, that one.
Yeah, figures.
Yeah. Then Plinkett argues that the decoy queen shouldn't be commanding the handmaiden that is the queen in disguise.
It's
Doing
called
something like that can throw people off to really emphasize the fact that Padme isn't the queen.
Yeah, but that's Plinkett for you. Then he claims that almost every single line of dialogue in the movie makes no sense. Yeah, he actually said that shit. So... yeah, I know that one. It's stupid. Oh, and then Plinkett claims that Qui-Gon should have just stolen the Nubian parts from Watto.
They were in Hutt territory. If he tried to pull that stunt, they'd be all over him, and it would cause an incident between him, the Jedi, and the Republic. Not to mention they would have probably gotten themselves killed.
Yeah, and a lot of things Republic needs currently in a situation like this is getting in a conflict with the Hutts, right?
Yeah.
Or Qui-Gon might be expelled from the Jedi Order for pulling something like that.
Yeah. Then Plinkett decides to make rape jokes regarding Shmi Skywalker wanting some sort of vibrator for her.
What the
Yeah! It was there! I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You saw
It's
it.
as I said, playing a character, it doesn't fit with reviewing the Phantom Menace. But I guess what I'm trying to say is this review is a product of its time. Back when these types of jokes were far more prudent. Of course, you can't make these kinds of jokes now or you'd be crucified.
I still think they're inappropriate.
Yes, but yes, I don't think they belong in a review talking about any Star Wars film for that matter. I'm just saying you can tell when it was made. It's a product of its time.
Yeah, though I don't...
Of course, it still sucks, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying why those kinds of jokes are there.
Yeah. Then Plinkett, he of course had to tackle the midi-chlorians are the Force misconception. Because why not?
Well, okay, that's not accurate. He does bring up the fact that the movie does... He does bring up the fact that the movie says the midichlorians aren't the Force, but he just waves it off by saying, or whatever. So that's a weird area there.
Well, I guess Plinkett was drunk by drinking all sorts of beer and shit. So, there's that. Then he claims that the Naboo blockade being gone and only one ship left is very convenient for our heroes and the plot. Haven't you thought, Plinkett, that maybe because the planet is already under full Federation control, maybe they don't need a blockade? Because the planet is under their control. It makes sense that there would be a blockade in a planet that is yet to be theirs for taking. Why do they need many ships for a planet that's under their control? They might as well use those ships to go to make a blockade on another planet. Like, think about it. But this is Plinkett. So, there's that. There's one here that we'll tackle as its own. So, we'll leave it for later. Then Plinkett, he decides to criticize Yoda's speech of fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, for not making sense. He claims it makes no sense.
It does. Just look at Anakin's life. So he fears about losing his mother, which leads to him hating, which leads him to suffering. Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much his character arc in the prequels.
Or if you want to look at another non-Star Wars example, look at the show Lucifer with the Mena deal. When he has his angel, half human baby. He fears what's going to befall him living on Earth and being different, and also is he's going to develop any of his angel powers or not. And when he gets sick, he's fearful of that, and he starts to develop hatred towards Michael because he feels he's responsible for the illness, and that just leads him to anger and suffering. So yeah, these things are connected.
Yep. Also, another thing, this quote from Yoda actually can be used in the original trilogy. I got a good example. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. You know, when Luke is facing Vader. At the end part when Luke is hiding. So once Vader mentions Leia, you know, Luke fears for her. He fears that Vader might do something to her, you know, turn to the dark side. And once Vader mentions, if you're not turned to the dark side, then perhaps she will. What happens to Luke? Fear leads to anger. He exploded in rage. He went against Darth Vader. He was wailing at him hard with all sorts of lightsaber slashes and staffs and shit. And then he defeats him and he cuts his arm and Vader is thrown down on his knees. Luke has a saber in his face, and from there Luke went from being angry at Vader to hating him for basically, you know, for threatening his sister, for threatening to Luke to pretty much, well, lose his sister. Like, it led to from anger to hate. And then when the Emperor is like, good, your hate has made you powerful, fulfill your destiny and take your father's place at my side. That is when his hate leads to suffering, because in there Luke realizes that he is basically becoming the next Darth Vader. He's becoming like his father, and from there he's suffering at the realization that he was going to turn to the dark side, become just as his father. And in order to turn away from all that, he had to literally let go of his suffering, let go of his hate, his anger, let go of everything. So he turned off the lightsaber and threw it away in order to remain in the light side. So he was that damn close in turning to the dark side, and he pretty much did beat to beat that same quote that Yoda put in the Phantom Menace. Even in the original trilogy, this quote makes sense. So how does it not make sense, Plinkett? Explain to me that one, when this quote can be used in the context of the original trilogy. Do you guys know?
It's a moron.
Of course he's a moron.
It's as we've been saying.
They claim to be experts, yet they really don't understand the nuances of these films.
No wonder he failed as a filmmaker.
Yep, indeed.
He doesn't know how the storytelling works.
Yep, indeed.
If he can't understand the simple ideas of the Star Wars, then it's no wonder he's a complete and utter failure when it comes to filmmaking.
Yep. Now, this next part is one part that... Oh, that one. Get ready. You're gonna have your anger boiling, because this one is directed specifically at you. So, Plinkett claims that he used his car to run over a Korean family.
Why?
He literally said that in the Phantom Menace.
Does that even make any sense in the context?
He literally just randomly said it. I think it was at the end of part 3 or part 4. He literally said he ran over a Korean family with his car.
Oh, God. I mean, this is the same guy who later says, like, the only reason why Mace Windu is there is because black people only like gangster movies and they don't like Star Wars. So, I mean, this guy's already a problematic piece of shit.
Honestly, I would love to see how this review would be seen if it came out today. Because pretty much every non-Star Wars related joke, with a few exceptions, are the opposite of woke. The Cluster would be crucified if this review came out today, and I'm sure the only reason he's not being crucified right now is because, well, everybody loves the review.
Which, oh god. Yeah. Final thing to mention on the Plinkett review is that Plinkett uses one of George Lucas's quotes where George says how special effects without a story being boring in order to shit on the prequel special effects. He claims the special effects without a story are boring, and he uses that to shit on the prequels special effects.
You know, the thing I find funny is that they use that quote, and yet one of the major criticisms of the movie, or shouldn't, and the other two, is that are about the story itself. meaning that the films have a story. Now, they don't think the story is good or told well, but the fact remains, the prequels have a story. So they aren't just special effects without a story. They're a story with special effects. So meaning that the whole argument is non-existent and falls apart immediately.
Yep. So, yep. So that was the Plinkett review. At least the major portions that we tackle in this section. So thoughts on that?
What a waste of time.
Well, me and Henson had to suffer to that shit. But yeah, that's Plinkett's review in a nutshell. Let me remind you guys, this is a review that pretty much puts Star Wars where it is right now. Just let me remind you guys that. So, yep. So with that out of the way, let's get into the main elephant in the room. That's not Jar Jar, because we already tackled him. It's basically the lightsaber duel between Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Maul. Yeah, this lightsaber duel. So, what's wrong with it? Well, I'm pretty sure all four of us think that it's a kick-ass lightsaber duel. However, the prequel haters, several of them beg to differ.
It's too flashy, it has no emotional weight to it, and it's too choreographed.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Too choreographed, too over the top and complex. No dialogue in between the fight. No real
A
intent.
stupid fight what a stormtrooper header would say, there isn't dialogue.
Yep. Hello, Greedo.
Like, okay, tackling the too choreographed argument, one, in what regard? Because
well, the issue is
it's been established since day fucking one, and I'm referring to the first movie with that one, that Jedi, or people who are attuned to the Force, can sense things before they happen. Luke with the training droid in episode 4 is able to sense its blaster fire before it happens. So, you can translate that to the prequels, and oh, well, gee, it's almost as if this is how Jedi Knights and Sith Lords in their prime would fight. Not to mention, we have snippets when they don't use their lightsaber, like when Qui-Gon punches Darth Maul, or how about the times when they use the Force, not just to lift things, but to push their opponents away.
Or open the door.
Yeah.
So...
Well, like, I mean, just imagine, like, a lightsaber isn't a traditional sword, so how they fight will be different, because lightsaber, I mean, it has a different weight, different shape. I mean, how would you actually use these type of things? I mean, the fighting style will be obviously different, won't they?
It could be, yeah. One thing we're gonna mention, watching the documentary, George Lucas himself said that in the original trilogy, all we saw was just old people fighting with sticks, or somebody with a fucking machine suit, and somebody that was a young adult against a freaking old guy in a machine suit. This is where the Jedi are at their prime, at their best in regards to fighting. That's what George Lucas said in the documentary. He wanted to portray that. He wanted to portray what a full-powered Jedi, full-powered, fully skilled Jedi would do against the Sith in their prime.
I mean, even OT fans, except like the most hardcore purist, will admit that the first lightsaber duel in episode 4 wasn't all that great.
I mean, seriously, if you look at... Yeah, lightsaber in episode 4 sucks. I mean, the things that will suck even more than that will be the ones in Sequel Trilogy, especially the Praetorian Guards.
Oh, that's one we might mention later. Don't worry. In another video. So, but yeah, so they say all that. And the two choreograph argument, they mention it as in because they think that it looks a lot like if it was some sort of theater dance or theater play in a way. That it looks like it's way too choreographed, way too fancy, a sort. That's what they claim. They claim especially more in the next prequels, but this one is no exception in some reviews, like Plinkett's.
again, I would have to argue when you're dealing. Okay, you don't have to like the fight for whatever fucking reason, but you have to accept that this is how this actually makes sense. This is how highly trained Force users would fight. It's just reality.
Yep.
God, I fucking hate these people.
Tell me about it.
Oh yeah, indeed. Now there is another thing that was mentioned. I think it was either Plinkett or Confused Matthew, but they basically said that Obi-Wan should have used the Force speed to traverse the shields and help Qui-Gon. You know, when Qui-Gon and Darth Maul, when the shield was open, they were fighting, and Obi-Wan had to pretty much run. And instead of using the Force speed that we saw at the beginning of the movie, he didn't use it at the end. Like that apparently is one plot hole. So, got anything to say on that one, guys?
Is it plot hole, or is it? Or how do you know if Obi-Wan was actually using it and he can't? I don't know. I mean, was he was.
Because Force speed in the beginning of the movie, we see it when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are fighting the Droidekas. Apparently, they went ridiculously fast with Force speed. We even saw them blurry auras of sorts when they fled. Whereas here in the lightsaber duel, we don't see anything like that. So, maybe it is a plot hole. It doesn't ruin the movie by any means, but it can still be a plot hole. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree.
No comment.
Okay, I guess it's probably the only legitimate criticism that we could have this lightsaber duel. But the other ones, too choreographed, no dialogue, over the top complex, no real internal conflict. Fuck off with those arguments.
You don't need dialogue in order to be emotionally invested.
Yeah. Show, don't tell, right?
Yeah, screw you.
I do find it funny. They complain about there being too much dialogue, and in a scene that really doesn't need dialogue, then they bitch about it.
Oh, they complain about the dialogue when there's no lightsaber duel. That's the problem.
Looking at you, Hello Greedo, you goddamn moron.
Like, in their minds, for a lightsaber duel to work, the characters involved have to have years worth of history. So here's the thing, though. That's not how storytelling works. Two characters don't need to have years worth of history in order to have a good fight.
I mean, if you actually...
Because think about it like this. What we see here is a resume, or a continuation of a millennium-long conflict that's been on pause until now. These characters, Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan, continue this fight as if zero time has passed. Not to mention the fate of the fucking, Naboo going on,
It is. I mean, there seems to be enough connection, I think, because their predecessors have been doing the same thing for generations, right? And Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are now finally seeing a Sith Lord appear after 1,000 years, right?
Yeah.
Was it 1,000 years?
1,000, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Maul obviously doesn't like the Jedi also. Yeah. With all the Alas will reveal themselves to the Jedi, Alas will have revenge. There is enough of a connection, I think. I mean, being a Jedi and being a Sith, that seems like enough of a connection. I mean, what else do they want?
They want something akin to Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, or Luke and Vader in episodes 5 and 6.
What is this? Oh, God.
Prequel Trilogy hitters. That's what it is.
This is a prequel trilogy, not the Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy, where the main character is related to everyone.
Well, that's pity here.
Or the Ultimate Spider-Man comics.
That too. So, but yeah. So that's that lightsaber duel. Now, obviously, we'll revisit these criticisms in the later videos because they return. But for now, we'll leave him at that. So that's the elephant in the room of episode 1. Now we get into how this movie impacted the expanded universe. Yeah, this is now where we actually can release the shackles of talking about the expanded universe. So, okay, question, guys: how did this movie impact the expanded universe?
But first, the main Coruscant first was appeared in The Heir to the Empire, written by Timothy Zahn. Okay, no, that is more like The EU impacted the movie. Okay, let's just
But
combine that.
Coruscant was Lucas's idea, so
the name is just Timothy Zahn's idea.
And the double-bladed lightsaber came from Tales of the Jedi, used by Exar Kun.
Yeah, that too. So
And let's be honest, we Star Wars fans, prior to the prequels, not we because I wasn't alive back then. Neither were Henson or CJG.
well, I was well, I didn't see it in 1999. I did see it in 2001 DVD. So
Many
kind of.
people who read the EU knew that the Emperor's name was Palpatine, the capital of the Republic was Coruscant, and they had a vague idea what the Sith were.
So basically, this movie pretty much confirmed that all of those terms were not just fluff from the expanded universe. So there's that. So that's one thing. Another big thing that the expanded universe has done is, well, all of the stuff that the expanded universe brought to us. You know, from the video games to the comics to the books that it brought us. Like, there's plenty of it. Like,
Star Wars Republic came out like a Star Wars Republic. Okay, so Star Wars Republic was originally just called Star Wars, right?
yeah.
It came out late 1998, but we know it was due to the prequels because there's Ki-Adi-Mundi in the first storyline.
Yeah, indeed. So there, obviously, yeah, the Star Wars Republic comics are before they were called Star Wars Republic, all the way until issue like 40 something, 46, I believe, is when it tackles episode 1, because 46 and onwards is episode 2 and Clone Wars. So there's that. Obviously, the novelization itself by Terry Brooks, that one was handled by him, as well as George Lucas. Yeah, George Lucas had involvement.
We cannot forget about Darth Bane, right, Henson?
Oh,
yes, Darth Bane was a Lucas creation.
that was
And
first.
Jedi vs. Sith, which we have controversial opinions about it for good reason.
But Darth Bane,
Yes.
But fun fact to you, I guess you haters, if you're seeing this, Darth Vader was actually first featured in the Phantom Menace novelization from Terry Brooks.
And again, he was a Lucas creation.
Yep.
So one of the biggest parts of the EU was created by
George
the man himself.
Not to mention, the Phantom Menace gave a lot of inspiration to SWOTOR, because they do reference prequels a lot.
Actually, what the Phantom Menace actually gave us for all sorts of media, including SWOTOR, all of its different planets and alien species that it gave us. It gave us Naboo. It obviously gave of course, it already existed in some ways before, but obviously the Phantom Menace expanded on that. But it did give us Naboo. Definitely gave us the Trade Federation as one of the organizations roaming around the Star Wars. Obviously, they gave us the Gungans. They gave us the Ducks, like, you know, the race from Sebulba. They gave us, you know, the Toydarians. Like, they gave us plenty of things. Neimoidians as well. Like, there's plenty the Phantom Menace brought to the table for the Star Wars continuity and this universe.
I remember reading from Splinter of the Mind Side saying that C-3PO was kind of afraid of Darth Vader because Darth Vader, for some reason, I'm saying some reason because it's 1978, knows how to shut down C-3PO because he knows every single command about C-3PO. Which, now thinking about it, makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Because C-3PO was built by Anakin. Yeah, makes more sense now. So there's that. Now, obviously, those disappointed that Darth Maul did not have enough screen time or enough time in the movie. Don't worry, the Expanded Universe has got you covered with Darth Maul Shadowhunter, the Darth Maul 2000 comic, and lots more. Obviously, years later, Maul Lockdown, but we're tackling more the Expanded Universe that came out close to episode 1. We're
And
tackling...
if you're an absolute moron who doesn't understand anything about why things are happening in Star Wars Episode 1, read Cloak of Deception.
It definitely adds to the movie, yeah. So there is that. Obviously, in terms of video games, Episode 1 Battle for Naboo, Episode 1 Racer, the Phantom Menace video game, if you want to call it that, Star Wars Starfighter, that too, and several...
Star Wars Obi-Wan.
And the Phantom Menace game.
Oh yeah, that one too.
Now, Star Wars Episode 1 Obi-Wan. That's an interesting game, isn't it?
God, not good, but yeah, it is part of the Hispanic universe. I do wish they'd at least remake it with the Jedi Knight engine and gameplay and stuff, but that's another topic. So yeah, there's obviously the Episode 1 journals focusing on every single every single one of the main characters, and even Darth Maul, from Anakin Skywalker to Queen Amidala, Darth Maul. So there's that. There's obviously the Episode 1 comic version. There's plenty of stuff that the Phantom Menace did for the expanded universe. Now, there is one thing we gotta quickly tackle, and it's the supposed contradictions or retcons that the Phantom Menace brought to the table. Stuff like how the contradictions and the contradictions and retcons, I'm saying all this in quotations, that the Phantom Menace supposedly brought to the expanded universe that was already established. One of those, obviously, is the change in where the prequel trilogy era is set. Before, it was supposed to be like at least 40 years before episode 4, 40 to 50, but obviously the Phantom Menace changed that to 32 BBY, so it's actually 30 years. And some prequel trilogy haters claim that shit is, well, fucking contradiction, ruins the whole thing, according to them. So.
But the beautiful thing about, at least back then, was that if something came up, Lucasfilm could do a little thing called explaining it.
Which they certainly did.
Back when they, cared.
Yeah, good times. Good times.
Yeah, indeed. So then this one about Obi-Wan's master, we'll tackle in episode 2. So apparently the rule of 2 being flawed. You know how in the prequel films Yoda explains the rule of 2, that there are only 2 Sith, a master and apprentice, works in the prequels, but the original trilogy, the Emperor and Vader want to recruit Luke Skywalker to the cause. That will make 3 Sith, surely breaking the Sith's own rules.
Did they not pay attention to what was going on in that trilogy?
Explain.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Vader wants to... What was it again? Oh, yeah. Kill the Emperor and take over the galaxy. And 3 minus 1 equals...
2.
That's right! 2! It's almost as if how the Sith work is that the apprentice kills the master and takes on an apprentice of their own. What? My God! It's almost as if Lucas thought of that or something.
Yeah, but...
Point is, that's not even an argument. Who even said that?
Oh, who even said that? Well, apparently one of the articles from NME that is titled 25 Plot Holes That Will Ruin Star Wars for Pedants.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh, and it's not the only one. Apparently Digital Spy also has 130 huge Star Wars plot holes introduced by the prequels.
You see, this is one of the reasons why I don't like casuals. They don't care enough to do the fucking research.
Normies.
EU, or maybe it is, but certain parts of the episode 4 novelization are literally... You remember the section of the will of the wills, where they, talk about the basic things about how Senator Palpatine came into power, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, the thing with the novelizations of the original trilogy is that they operated like normal novelizations in that they weren't meant to, be quote-unquote canon, while with the novelizations of the prequels, they were.
Essentially, episode 5 novelization is useless because it's literally the movie. 4 and 6 kind of have new information, but yeah. Oh, another thing. Wait a second. If you read the episode 1 novelization, there's actually a scene showing Anakin saving a Tusken Raider.
That's a wink wink, nudge nudge.
Yeah.
which shows irony when the Tusken Raiders kills his mother, right?
You could say that.
Essentially, the episode, well, essentially all the prequel novelizations act as extended cuts of the movies.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, speaking of novelizations of movies, so this is one that me and Doll won't figure out. So apparently, so you guys know that famous quote about "Are you an angel?" You know that one. So when we mentioned that maybe the angels are alien species that exist in Star Wars, well, fun fact, not only is that the case in the expanded universe, but also, guess what? Angels existed as far back as the Episode 4 novelization from 1976. So that line of quote is not only a little kid talking, but as in saying what he knows, but also it's a line referencing older material of Star Wars. Mind blown.
Shit like this is why you do your fucking research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are no angels, right? Idiots.
Well, there you go. But
I mean, hey, if the Star Wars universe could have hell in it somehow, then who's to say that they don't have some form of heaven and angels and shit like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's little ghosts who look like freaking holograms.
Yep. Indeed. So, yeah. There's that. And any other things you guys want to mention on how the Phantom Menace impacted the expanded universe?
I mean, there's the book Rogue Planet, but that seems to be more of a New Jedi Order book than a prequel tie-in.
It still ties into the prequels, so it still counts. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh wait, Cloak of Deception does reference the Benki Clan Techno Union, but is that episode 2 or 9? That's
the specific references that well, it is actually episode 2, but that's another thing. So we're just gonna mention how we're just mentioning how episode 1 affected the expanded universe, both continuity, media wise, and timeline. So, but I think we mentioned all of it, unless you guys have something else to mention.
I will say this, and this also goes for the other two films, but by the time we got episode 1, the EU was already at the New Jedi Order.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
So, in terms of properly connecting the two eras of the original trilogy and prequels, couldn't really be done, especially post Return of the Jedi stuff.
It was done a little bit. With me,
well, that's the thing. It wasn't as done as effectively as it could have.
Oh, of course, yeah, because obviously the prequels were still being made. So, obviously they made. What's up?
I was just gonna say, at the very least, it doesn't ruin anything, but it does suck that the universe isn't it sucks that say Luke and Leia dealing with the fact that Anakin, choked Padme until years after the fact.
Darkness Trilogy, which is 35 ABY.
Yeah.
So it could have been
seeing location besides Coruscant, but Coruscant doesn't count.
There could have been Luke and Leia exploring their parents' history. It could have been explored in its own book and everything. Tatooine Coast did that. The problem is, well, in regards to Luke's side of exploring his backstory, as in how he was born, who his parents are, well, the fucking Black Fleet Crisis ruined that shit by doing it first. So
anyway, I remember this thing. Padme actually did not first appear in the Phantom Menace. She first appeared as a portrait in the Dark Force Rising comic book adaptation.
Oh yeah, and actually even the artist actually they had a snippet that Natalie Portman was going to be the mother of Luke Skywalker, so they actually painted that portrait to look similar to Natalie Portman when they were doing that comic. So think of that.
It's the little things that you appreciate.
Mm-hmm. So there is that. Now, obviously, Into the Darkness trilogies where we get the prequels actually now connecting all the way into post the Jedi era, but we'll get to that when we get to episode 3, because right now at this point, New Jedi Order only has like a few references, like the Jane Nubian, the Trade Federation, also the Ducks, Shaboba's race. So, but that's it. There's not that many. So there is that. So yeah, that's right now.
My Maul needs to stay dead.
Yeah, Darth Maul definitely needs to stay there in the expanded universe. So yeah, now that's something we'll tackle on another video when we inevitably tackle TCW. But yes, so there's that. So yeah, with that out of the way, well, now we get into the conclusion of this video. So who wants to go first and say their final words?
I'll just say that hopefully through this video, you, the viewers, have seen how easy it is to tear apart these arguments, to prove them wrong, in that, yes, we can like these movies unironically, and not just because we hate or think the sequels are shit. We like these films on their own and have defended them on their own. And we only brought up the sequels in order to prove a point.
Mm-hmm. Especially because most Prequel Trilogy haters are Sequel Trilogy fanboys and love to defend.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. So there's that. Anything else to mention, Henson?
Not from me.
Okay, who's next?
We've proven that a lot of these OT fanboys' arguments against the Phantom Menace and the rest of the Prequel Trilogy do not hold up. Ergo, you should not take them seriously, and if you do try to say that these are legit and that you would recommend them, I have no respect for you. I do not take you seriously. Eat shit and die.
Well, that's definitely something. But then again, this is the Shadow Lord speaking. Anything else, King?
I will not waste any more words on these fools.
Okay. Doan?
I mean, listening and reading these quote-unquote criticisms made by these people makes your head hurt because rarely any of them makes sense. So it is kind of painful to read them, but then again, it is important that these people should not repeat their arguments because the internet is full with these nonsensical arguments. So, I mean, if you see them, don't be afraid to challenge these rules because they need to know how stupid they are. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
Okay. As for me, well, my final words are that this has been a project that has been in development for at least a month, for a while. We've been considering wanting to remake our defending the prequel trilogy videos for a while, and we're glad that we're finally tackling it. So because we feel that there needs to be more people that actually sticks up to the prequels, because seriously, the amount of hatred that the prequel trilogy gets even nowadays is fucking insane. Like it's just something that is so biased, so hateful, so irrational, like so aimed at just hating it for the sake of hating it, that it just makes me like what the fuck is up with this? Like, it's one thing if you don't like the movie, but it's another to outright claim that they're so terrible movies because of this quote unquote criticisms you have, like. Especially you, Plinkett, and confused Matthew, like you two starting this shit, seriously, like it does piss me off, and yeah, I'm definitely willing to continue with doing this, getting into Attack of the Clones, and definitely Revenge of the Sith. Oh, that's the one I'm looking forward the most. So yep. And now, one note, for those that don't like the prequels, keep in mind that this isn't necessarily aimed at those that just don't like the prequels but have like reasonable arguments for them or don't go out of their way to hate them. This is more against those that go completely out of their way with a full hateful agenda of trying to completely shit on the prequels and trying to put their narrative into others' mindsets. You know, people like Plinkett, Chris Stockman, Confused Matthew, Hello Greedo back then. Obviously, there's many. There's Belated Media. There was Nostalgia Creek at one point. There was Linkara. There were many back in the day. And so even Simon Pegg and Belated Media back then. So there's many. So yeah, like at this point, I just think the prequels, like just the sequels, at one point, not made by us, like just as somebody needed to actually properly analyze movies and say why they are bad movies in the context of Star Wars movies, because as movies of their own, they're just they're fine, but as Star Wars movies, they can be considered bad, especially at 8 and 9. But the same could be argued for the prequels. Somebody needs to stick up to them because they're far from the worst movies. There's worse movies out there. Like, there really are. And the people that hate the prequels, they like to defend worse movies. You know, Sequel Trilogy fanboys. So yeah, like, we really needed to do this video and the other two that are coming soon. So yeah. This is General CJG and the rest of Star Wars signing off on this one, and may the Force be with you on the next State of Star Wars being, well, we'll see which one it is, because Attack of the Clones definitely will take a while to release, just as this one took a while. So, but rest assured, that one is coming. Anyway, so see you guys in the next State of Star Wars. Bye-bye.
Live long and prosper.
Signing off.
Farewell, mortals.